Chapter 408. Yes. If you and Madam don't mind, we can talk about it outside. Everything can be discussed, right? Chu Luiyue had always been very sensible and wouldn't be forceful when it was time for her to soften her attitude. The other party seemed to be quite interested in this suggestion as he smiled lightly. Interesting? Chu Luiyue hurriedly glanced at the dagger that was about to fall. She was anxious and wanted to rush him again. However, she still held herself back. In this situation, she was already at a disadvantage. How could she have the right to talk to the other party as an equal? If you promise not to touch that thing, I'll agree to your request. After waiting for a while, that man's voice sounded again. Chu Luiyue was dazed. Master, what do you mean? What do you mean by touch? What do you mean by not touch? Who knows what will happen to this thing in the future? She didn't dare to make this promise casually. A black ray of light suddenly flew out from the red dragon head. It went straight for Chu Luiyue. Sensing the strong suppression from it, Chu Luiyue's heart harshly skipped a beat. Just from this move alone, this man's abilities seemed to be above Mu Qinghe's. Even though Mu Qinghe's cultivation level and abilities were suppressed to below a stage 7 warrior after leaving Heaven's Canopy, his aura that belonged to a strong warrior wouldn't weaken. If Mu Qinghe fought with a stage 6 warrior who hadn't entered Heaven's Canopy, even if they were of the same cultivation level, he would definitely be able to defeat the other party easily. And this man also gave me the same feeling. Chu Luiyue held her breath. No wonder Jinbao Pavilion is so arrogant. It turns out that they have such an important person backing them up. Emperor Zhouwen was quite wary of Jinbao Pavilion previously, so he should know something. Even though the suppression from the black ray of light was very strong, Chu Luiyue didn't feel threatened when it was in front of her. Thus, she slightly relaxed and obediently waited at her original spot. If he really wanted to kill me, he would have done it long ago. Why would he waste so much effort? Then she saw the black ray of light fly to her hand. It silently pierced through the flames in her palm and landed on the silver pyramid. Chu Luiyue's pupils shrank. The power of the flame came from the water droplet in her dantian. It had always been very domineering and always had the upper hand, but why was it so calm today? His opponent's attack passed right through? She thought that it would automatically stop her, but she didn't expect. In an instant, the silver pyramid turned completely black. All of the resplendent light was concealed. At a glance, it looked like an ordinary black stone. Even the aura and pressure inside had been completely sealed. The flame in Chu Luiyue's palm gradually subsided. The pyramid gently fell into her palm. It was slightly cold to the touch. But other than that, there was nothing special about it. Even the strong sense of summoning disappeared in an instant. Only when he came into contact with it would that subtle feeling emerge faintly. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a while. I've already sealed it. Other than me, no one else can break it. This way it'll save me a lot of trouble. The man said casually. Chu Luiyue was speechless. This saved her a lot of trouble, but it also completely cut off her way of playing any tricks. From now on, what was the difference between this thing and a piece of useless stone on her? With this layer of barrier, no one will discover it even if you carry it with you. When you meet my wife, I'll naturally unlock the seal. Hearing the other party's relaxed tone as if he was talking about the good weather today, Chu Luiyue endured it and gritted her teeth as she said word by word, "Then I'll have to thank you first, master." How was he helping her? He was clearly guarding against her. However, she didn't even have a reason to refute. The man opposite her chuckled. It's nothing. It's not worth mentioning. Chu Luiyue secretly gritted her teeth again. When she had the chance, she would definitely let this first master know how powerful she was. Crack. Suddenly a sound was heard. Chu Luiyue's body suddenly fell. The wall could no longer hold on and a large piece of it fell down. Chu Luiyue, who was only relying on that dagger, naturally fell down as well. Her heart suddenly felt empty. Looking down, new ice cubes were condensing on the surface of the lake. At a glance, countless stars were flickering below, dazzling and dazzling. However, Chu Luiyue's body immediately tensed up. Just as she was about to fall into the lake, a gentle force suddenly came over. It was as if there was an invisible hand that easily held her up. Looking at the ice surface close by, Chu Luiyue finally heaved a heavy sigh of relief. Thank you. It was obvious who had done it. The other party didn't say anything. The next moment, a long black bridge suddenly appeared in mid-air. One end of the bridge slowly extended to her feet, while the other end disappeared into the darkness in the distance and couldn't be seen clearly. Take this path and you'll be able to leave smoothly. That man's tone was very calm, but Chu Luiyue knitted her brows when she heard it. Why? Does this person seem to be very familiar with this place? Doesn't the Imperial Mausoleum only open once every few years? Why is he so clear about everything here? Seeing that Chu Luiwei didn't move, that man continued, Don't worry. Don't worry, once we leave this place, we'll be able to leave Golden Inheritance Peak without anyone noticing. Chu Luiwei was even more shocked. Even if Emperor Jiawen was here, he probably wouldn't know about all this. This First Master truly had some tricks up his sleeve. Thank you, First Master. Chu Luiwei wasn't dumb. It would be a waste to reject the other party's offer. Without thinking, she knew that it was a mess outside. If she went back the way she came from, she might be skinned alive by that group of people. Being able to leave quietly like this was the best thing that could happen. She was very sincere when she thanked him. After saying that, she didn't hesitate and stepped onto the long black bridge. This long bridge was clearly formed by the other party's force, and Chu Luiwei walked on it as if she was walking on flat ground. She raised her brows slightly. This person's abilities are really immeasurable. After walking a few steps, she suddenly thought of something and turned around to look in that direction. First Master, aren't you leaving? This has nothing to do with you, said the other party calmly. Chu Luiwei thought about it and thought that was true. He didn't even want to meet her, so he naturally wouldn't be willing to leave with her. He's so capable, so why would he be worried about not being able to leave? Thinking of this, she didn't say anything else and continued walking forward. However, when she was halfway there, she stopped again. Her face was still calm, but her eyes were slightly downcast and one couldn't see her emotions. The hands in her sleeves slowly clenched tightly. Finally, as if she had finally made up her mind, she softly asked, First Master, can I bring someone with me? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 409. The other party was silent for a moment. Who is it? His tone was clear and faint. It sounded a little ethereal, as if it came from a faraway place. However, for some reason, Chu Luiwei heard a trace of displeasure in his voice. It didn't seem like he was displeased, but it still sounded a little strange. Chu Luiwei pursed her lips and said tentatively, It's the person who came in with me. She believed that with the other party's ability, he would know who she was referring to. He doesn't seem to treat you well, but you want to help him now? The man didn't directly agree or refuse. Instead, he asked such a question. Chu Luiwei was stunned for a moment. How do you know how he treats me? The man paused and then seemed to snort softly. Chu Luiwei suddenly understood what he meant. Since he was so familiar with this place, he naturally knew what had happened here like the back of his hand. For a moment, Chu Luiwei almost thought that this master had always been in this imperial mausoleum. Of course, she knew that was impossible. But it was obvious that he had been here more than once before. Chu Luiwei's hands clenched even tighter. She felt as if something was stuck in her throat. In fact, even she didn't know why she suddenly said that. No matter how she looked at it, Mu Qinghe wasn't worth her saving. But, in front of her, the image of him kneeling on the ground with tears streaming down his face kept appearing. And that, Your Highness. She didn't know how much sincerity there was in his grief. She didn't even know how he betrayed her. But, his identity is special. If he dies here, I'll also be in a lot of trouble, Chu Luiwei said with her eyes lowered. Jian Fengqi knew that she and Mu Qinghe had come out. If Mu Qinghe really died here, she definitely wouldn't be able to escape responsibility. According to Jian Fengqi's personality, he definitely wouldn't let it go. Besides, she was still counting on Mu Qinghe to bring her back to the Tianling dynasty. So, no matter what, I would like to ask for your help. But if it's not convenient for you, then, are there any other reasons? The man suddenly asked. Are you pleading for mercy for yourself or for him? His voice was still calm, but Chu Luiwei felt an inexplicable chill run down her spine when she heard it. And why did these words sound a little strange? However, these words did make her instantly sober up. She thought about it seriously for a moment and finally shook her head. For myself. After being reborn, the most important thing she learned was that she had to think about herself in everything. Most of the time, the so-called sympathy and compassion would not bring her any benefits. Instead, it would bring her a series of troubles. Mu Qinghe was no longer the Mu Qinghe of the past. And she was no longer the Shangguan Yu of the past. A favor. The great master finally spoke. His tone was slightly gentler than before. Chu Luiwei inexplicably breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that he had agreed. Thank you, great master. For some reason she seemed to be easily influenced by his voice. Was it because his aura was too strong? Chu Luiwei really wanted to meet this mysterious great master now, but it was rare that he was willing to help. Naturally, she would not do anything to offend him. Suddenly she thought of a problem. Ever since she took the pyramid, she had not had time to look at it. She did not know how Mu Qinghe was doing now. Bang! A muffled sound came from behind her. Chu Luiyue was shocked and immediately turned around. Mu Qinghe was lying on the black bridge behind her, covered in blood. He was motionless and seemed to be unconscious. The fall just now seemed to be quite heavy. His chest shook and he spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. It looked really miserable and miserable. The corner of Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched. This appearance was too sudden. What happened to him? Chu Luiyue could not help but ask when she saw that he seemed to be more seriously injured than before. Oh, he just fainted. He won't die from a fall. That person said coldly as if he did not care. Chu Luiyue was speechless. Or do you want him to know that you were the one who saved him so that he would be more grateful to you? The speaker did not mean it, but the listener did. Chu Luiyue felt as if her heart had been stabbed by a knife. No need, this is for the best. Thank you. She quickly sorted out her thoughts. When she looked at Mu Qinghe again, her heart was calm. That great master was right. This was the best choice. She had saved him before and he was grateful to her. But in the end, it was just a joke. This time she was only doing it for herself. Thinking of this, she walked over and planned to carry Mu Qinghe out. However, just as she leaned over, something flew over from the corner of her eye. She immediately raised her hand and caught the thing. After taking a closer look, she realized that it was actually a yuan instrument. Use this to take him out. Don't dirty my path. The man's tone was cold. Chu Luiyue could not help but mutter in her heart. So this great master is also like this. To put it nicely, he's fastidious. To put it bluntly, yes, he's on par with his wife. This bridge is formed by force. How can it be dirty? Besides, it's black. How dirty can it be? However, since she had taken advantage of him, she naturally wouldn't say such things to his face. Besides, using this yuan instrument could indeed save her a lot of energy. What are you talking about? Chu Luiyue was shocked. Her mouth was tightly shut just now and she did not make a sound. Does this person know how to read minds? He can even guess that. She immediately looked up with a smile. Nothing. I was just thinking that you and your wife are a match made in heaven. This sentence obviously pleased this difficult great master. He smiled and his tone and attitude were much better than before. My wife and I think so too. Chu Luiyue choked. She had seen people who felt good about themselves, but she had never seen anyone who praised her and his wife to their faces. Then I wish you and your wife a long life together. I'll be leaving now, Chu Luiyue said very sensibly. The other party chuckled but did not say anything else. Chu Luiyue was relieved and injected a stream of force into the yuan instrument. With a bang, the yuan instrument unfolded and floated in midair. It was a hexagonal flying disc. Then a net suddenly dropped from the flying disc and easily covered Mu Qinghe. Looking at Mu Qinghe curled up in the net, the corners of Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched. It's good to help, but this scene is really exciting, she coughed and turned around. Suddenly, a voice with a smile was heard. I also wish you and your future husband a happy marriage. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 410. Chu Luiyue looked back strangely. Why does this sentence sound so sincere? The corners of her mouth curled up as she thanked him again. No matter what, this blessing sounded pleasing to the ear. Moreover, she wanted to build a good relationship with this first master. Seeing that Mu Qinghe might not be his opponent, if she could successfully rope him in as her backer, wouldn't that be much more convenient? Chu Luiyue walked out while feeling strange in her heart. Although this first master's temper and style were a bit strange, she seemed to have an inexplicable sense of trust towards him. She rarely had this kind of feeling towards others. Especially when the other party had taken the initiative to help her many times. Generally speaking, one who was unaccountably solicitous was hiding evil intentions. However, Chu Luiyue really couldn't associate such a person with such a powerful method with this sentence. Perhaps he had other motives, but Chu Luiyue didn't seem to be worried or uneasy. Perhaps this was also a form of affinity to some extent? The surrounding light gradually dimmed. Chu Luiyue knew that she had already walked to the edge of the imperial mausoleum. She couldn't help but look back again. Looking past Mu Qinghe, who was suspended in midair, she almost couldn't see the scene inside. Only the layer of ice that was constantly freezing and capsizing, as well as the silently surging lake water, were exceptionally clear. And the space in the middle had already been completely frozen, and there was a faint frost that gradually covered the surroundings. Chu Luiyue watched quietly. She knew that this was the power of the seal that person had used. Obviously, he intended to completely freeze and seal the imperial mausoleum. After a long time, Chu Luiyue finally exhaled softly. How much power would this consume? This person was outside heaven's canopy, but he used such a powerful method. Would he really not be suppressed? After a moment, Chu Luiyue's lips curled up slightly. The current her still had a long way to go before she could reach this realm. Originally, she wanted to ask that person how he planned to deal with the other people in the imperial mausoleum. But after hesitating for a long time, she still didn't speak. She had already owed him another favor by helping Mu Qinghe. If there were a few more people, Master, you must understand your disciple, right? Chu Luiyue thought silently. Apart from Old Man Yi, she didn't care about the lives of the others. With Old Man Ye's ability, it shouldn't be a problem for him to leave this place, right? Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue couldn't help but take out the pyramid again and examine it carefully in his palm for a moment. Now, it was completely black and nothing could be seen on it. If I had known earlier, I would have checked on Master and the others first. Chu Luiyue put away the items, took a deep breath, and continued to lead Mu Qinghe along the other end of the black bridge. When Chu Luiyue finally left, the other people who had already entered the mausoleum did not have an easy time. Emperor Jiawen had Elder Ye's protection, so he wasn't in much danger. But the black shield couldn't hold on for long as it was quickly covered by the golden ice layer, and it became very weak. The golden sand that surged from behind piled up and finally destroyed the black shield completely. Elder Yi then continued to bring Emperor Jiawen away. Luckily, with the faint glow from the golden ice layer, they could vaguely see the surrounding scene. Their speed was much faster than when they came. Emperor Jiawen really felt aggrieved and indignant. Those people are still in the imperial mausoleum. But I, the rightful emperor of country Yaoqin, was actually chased out of the imperial mausoleum in such a pathetic state. I don't need to look in the mirror to know what I look like now. Luckily, only Elder Yi is here. If not, I would really lose all my face. After fleeing for an unknown period of time, the speed of the surging golden sand finally slowed down. Elder Yi then stopped and looked at Emperor Jiawen. Your Majesty, are you okay? Emperor Jiawen's face was pale as he waved his hands. I'm fine. It's just that. He couldn't finish his sentence for a long time. Elder Yi coughed and shifted his gaze away. However, Emperor Jiawen still felt very embarrassed. Old Man Yi, could it be that we can only watch helplessly? Elder Yi was helpless. Then what else can we do? The people inside have already taken the initiative. I don't understand. Emperor Jiawen stretched out his hand and held his forehead. I really don't understand. How can anyone casually enter the imperial mausoleum? There were only a few people who knew about this secret. Other than Elder Yi and me, logically speaking, nobody else should know about it. But they clearly came prepared. If not, how could it be so successful? Elder Yi paused and comforted him. Your Majesty, don't be anxious. After all, the things inside should still. Before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly looked up. He saw that the golden sand that kept surging over suddenly paused for a moment and then started to retreat. In the blink of an eye, it had already retreated by tens of steps. Emperor Jiawen was dazed. What's going on? Deep shock flashed across Elder Ye's eyes. Someone is restoring everything in the imperial mausoleum. What? Emperor Jiawen was also taken aback. How can this be? The construction of the imperial mausoleum is very complicated, and the various arrangements inside are very intricate. To restore it, unless tens of elite warriors work together. But weren't there only 2 people who went in just now? Elder Ye's gaze was still locked in that direction. No, you forgot that there's another possibility. Emperor Jiawen's expression suddenly froze. Could it be, Walla? An extremely soft and strange sound suddenly came from behind the 2 of them. Elder Yi immediately turned around alertly. Who's there? As he said that, he suddenly waved the fan in his hands. Bang! That force slammed into something. Then, a suppressed and painful moan was heard. Elder Yi and Emperor Jiawen looked at each other. There's actually someone? We actually didn't notice it at all previously. Elder Ye's expression changed slightly as he hurriedly walked forward and raised the fan in his hands again. A strong suppression instantly descended. At this moment, a familiar cry of surprise finally rang out in the darkness. Elder Yi, please have mercy. Elder Yi paused in his actions. However, Emperor Jiawen's expression had already changed. Rongjin. Elder Yi snapped his fingers and a cluster of bright flames appeared in his palm. The surroundings were instantly lit up. Previously he was worried that this fire would cause unnecessary trouble, but it was clearly unnecessary now. A nervous and flustered face appeared in front of the two of them. It's indeed Rongjin. Emperor Jiawen was furious as he angrily scolded. Rongjin, you've got guts. How dare you secretly leave Crown Prince Mansion and come here? Did you follow Elder Yi and me all the way here? Rongjin was originally a little afraid, but on second thought, what's there to be afraid of since things have already come to this? He clenched his fists, straightened his body and tried his best to make his voice sound righteous. Father, I'm Heaven's chosen son. What's wrong with me coming here? Old Man Yi suddenly laughed. Your Highness, the real Heaven's chosen son can directly enter Golden Inheritance Peak and control everything in the Imperial Mausoleum. There's already one inside, so where did your Heaven's chosen son title come from? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 411. Rongjin was dazed. What? He understood every word of Elder Ye's words, but why couldn't he understand them when they were strung together? Upon hearing this, Emperor Jiawen's gaze darkened. So Elder Yi also realized it. Elder Yi laughed helplessly and waved the fan in his hands. Even if you couldn't guess it previously, you should have known after seeing the previous scene. Emperor Jiawen closed his eyes. No wonder. If this is the answer, then everything that happened previously has a logical explanation. Rongjin, who was at the side, was confused when he heard the duo's conversation. The more he heard, the more flustered he became. Father? Elder Yi? What do you mean by this? Heaven's chosen son. Isn't it me? How can there be another one inside? That person must be fake. I'm the real Heaven's chosen son. But Emperor Jiawen went forward and harshly slapped Rongjin. This slap was very harsh and it directly caused Rongjin to fall to the ground. An intense bloody taste surged up Rongjin's mouth. Half of his face was numb, and his ears were buzzing. His mouth stiffly moved and he spat out a mouthful of blood and a broken tooth. Rongjin's eyes were filled with disbelief. Father had always been proud of me and thought highly of me. He rarely even reprimanded me, let alone hit me. How could I accept that one of my teeth was forcefully knocked out? At that moment, everything that he had experienced in the past few months flashed across his mind. Being demoted, having his power taken away, being grounded, I almost couldn't even stabilize my position as the crown prince. What exactly is going on? Wasn't everything fine in the past? Why did it gradually become like this? Rongjin, you're crazy. Emperor Jiawen finally lost control of his emotions at this point as he pointed at Rongjin's nose and scolded him. Who do you think you are? Heaven's chosen son? How can Heaven's chosen son be so useless and despicable? You're just a piece of trash. I was really blind in the past to make you the crown prince. Too many things had happened on this day, and Emperor Jiawen's mental state had been very tense. Until this moment when he saw Rongjin's undisciplined and arrogant manner, his last string finally snapped. Rongjin was scolded harshly and he was dazed. He was flustered and at a loss, so he started to speak without thinking. Father, why are you so sure that I'm a fake? I know you're just looking down on me. However, this matter was personally told to me by my mother. Imperial Mother would never lie to me. The chosen one must be me. It can only be me. Elder Yi looked at Rongjin's crazy appearance and knitted his brows. Before he could say anything, Emperor Jiawen suddenly laughed out loud. Ah, how laughable. What your Imperial Mother told you must be true. Rongjin, how brainless are you to say such a thing? Rongjin clenched his teeth and said, at most we'll go and confront Mother. We can always, confrontation? Emperor Jiawen's expression suddenly turned cold. You probably don't know that your mother is already dead, right? It was a light sentence, but it was like countless sharp knives that pierced into Rongjin's body. Rongjin's body trembled slightly, and his blood boiled in his chest. Finally, he couldn't help but spit out another mouthful of blood as he collapsed onto the floor. I am possible. Mother just told me that secret today. How can she be dead? It seems like she didn't spare any effort to make many arrangements for you before she died. It's a pity. You're still useless. But Emperor Jiawen finally understood the Empress's series of actions at this point. From start to end she did it for Rongjin. Heaven's chosen one? It seems like you don't know your current identity. Just like what Elder Yi had said, he was the true chosen one. Everything was predestined. Rongjin actually naively thought that the person was him? Even if he had fantasies before, he should be completely awake now that he was in this situation. Who is it? If it's not me, who is the chosen one? Muttered Rongjin with a hoarse voice, and his eyes were filled with despair. I originally thought that it was a great chance to turn things around, but I didn't expect it to be just a dream. It was just the beginning, but it was mercilessly exposed by someone. Emperor Jiawen's face darkened, and he didn't say anything for a long time. In actual fact, he wanted to know the answer more than Rong Jin. But based on their current abilities, how could they enter? Your Majesty, let's talk about everything after we leave this place. That person should be able to see our every move here, said Elder Yi. Elder Yi softly persuaded him. Emperor Jiawen harshly rubbed his face. Okay, let's go out first. Old man Yi nodded. Then, he looked at a certain spot in the darkness and twitched the corners of his mouth without a smile. The two of you have been watching for quite a while. You should be willing to come out now, right? After walking for some time, Chu Liyue finally saw a light in front of her. She was elated as she knew that it was the exit. She quickened her pace and walked forward, and the flying disc behind her immediately followed. Mu Qinghe was a little shaken, but luckily he didn't wake up. Just like that, the duo finally stepped through the exit and completely walked out of the Imperial Mausoleum. The sky was bright in front of them. Chu Liyue turned around and realized that they had indeed left Golden Inheritance Peak and came to the forest beside it. The thing that sent them out just now was also a transportation formation. However, that transportation formation was very inconspicuous, and one couldn't tell if they didn't look closely. Clang. The flying disc's net suddenly opened, and Mu Qinghe fell to the ground again. Chu Liyue glanced at him from the corner of her eye and coincidentally saw his eyeballs moving. Mu Qinghe is about to wake up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 412. Mu Qinghe felt as if he had sunk into a deep dream. He was drifting around, but he couldn't wake up no matter how hard he tried. For a moment, a thought even flashed across his mind. It would be great if he could sleep forever and never have to wake up to face everything. However, this thought only flashed across his mind. He tried a few times before he finally forced his eyes open. The bright light shone down and it was a little dazzling. He couldn't help but close his eyes and relax for a while before he got used to it. The blurry scene in front of him gradually became clear. This seems to be a forest? Mu Qinghe moved and immediately felt waves of pain all over his body, causing him to frown. He lowered his head to take a look and realized that his body was covered in blood and wounds. There was almost no place that was unscathed. Fortunately, most of these were superficial wounds that could be recovered after a period of recuperation. Mu Qinghe was slightly relieved, but he suddenly realized something and his expression changed drastically. That's not right. I was clearly in the Imperial Mausoleum earlier. How did I appear here now? He immediately turned around to look. The Golden Inheritance Peak, which looked like a sword, was standing not far away. Am I already outside the Golden Inheritance Peak? Mu Qinghe's doubts deepened, but no matter how hard he tried to recall, he couldn't remember what had happened earlier. The last thing he remembered was the withered vine leaves. At that time he seemed to be about to rush out, but, however, he couldn't remember what happened after that. Suddenly, from the corner of his eye, he saw a figure lying on the ground not too far away. It was actually Chu Liyue. He focused his gaze and endured the pain on his body as he slowly walked over. Chu Liyue seemed to have fainted as well. His eyes were tightly shut and his lips were pale. However, compared to the others, Chu Liyue was in a much better state. There weren't many bloodstains on his body, and there weren't even many wounds. Mu Qinghe stared at Chu Liyue for a while with a hint of scrutiny in his eyes. Was that sound his hallucination, or, as if sensing his gaze, Chu Liyue finally woke up? She subconsciously raised her hand to block the somewhat dazzling sunlight, and finally opened her eyes completely. At the same time, he saw Mu Qinghe standing in front of him. Vice Admiral Mu? After pausing for a moment, she seemed to have suddenly realized something. She stood up abruptly and looked around. Where are we? Mu Qinghe looked at her eyes that were filled with shock and bewilderment, and said expressionlessly, outside Golden Inheritance Peak. Chu Liyue looked at him in shock. You mean, we're already out? Mu Qinghe looked at her deeply as if he wanted to see through her completely. You don't know what happened? Chu Liyue shook his head. Didn't you pass that checkpoint and enter the center of the Imperial Mausoleum? How could he not know? Mu Qinghe suddenly leaned over and stared into Chu Liyue's eyes, questioning her word by word. Chu Liyue was shocked by his action and subconsciously took a step back. She frowned and looked confused. Vice Admiral Mu, what are you talking about? I only remember that I seemed to be trapped in a strange space. There was golden sand everywhere. I don't remember anything else. Suddenly, her gaze fell on him and she sucked in a breath of cold air. How did you suffer such a serious injury? Mu Qinghe pursed his lips tightly. Chu Luiyue didn't look like she was acting, but he felt that something was wrong. You really don't remember? Chu Luiyue looked helpless and was about to get up. Just as she stood up, she let out a hiss and covered her head. My head hurts. Mu Qinghe's eyes moved. Actually, the back of his head hurt too. Could it be that Chu Luiyue wasn't lying and we were all sent out together? Looking at her rubbing her head and grimacing in pain, Mu Qinghe inexplicably believed her and suppressed the dangerous aura on his body. He turned back to look at Golden Inheritance Peak again. If Chu Luiyue really got that thing, there was no need for her to come out with him. Moreover, she didn't have the fluctuation of that thing on her body. But looking at the current situation, there should be a third person who got it. Did you see anyone else in the Imperial Mausoleum? Mu Qinghe suddenly asked. Chu Luiyue still denied it. Other than the mysterious First Master, she had clearly seen all the other people who had gone in. But naturally she couldn't tell Mu Qinghe this. Mu Qinghe didn't expect to get any useful clues from Chu Luiyue. After pondering for a moment, he walked forward again. Chu Luiyue was shocked. Vice Admiral Mu, what are you doing? Do you still want to go back? Mu Qinghe said coldly, you can stay here or go back by yourself. Chu Luiyue. Your injuries are so serious, I'm afraid it's not good for you to go back now, right? Also, when we went in, we seem to have been discovered by the people around Golden Inheritance Peak. If we go back now, anyone with a normal brain would know that under such circumstances, they definitely couldn't go back. What's wrong with Mu Qinghe? However, Mu Qinghe didn't seem to care about her words and continued walking forward. That girl is right. Why are you in such a hurry to die? A voice filled with mockery and ridicule sounded lazily. Mu Qinghe stood still. Chu Luiyue was slightly shocked and looked up. A tall figure was slowly walking over from the forest beside them. Then he leaned against a tree trunk and looked at the two of them with a smile that wasn't a smile. It was Jian Fengqi. Chu Luiyue's eyes flickered as she bowed politely and asked in a seemingly casual manner, May I know when young Master Jian came? Vice Admiral Mu and I actually didn't notice. Jian Fengqi seemed to have thought of something unpleasant and his face turned cold. This young master had planned to come a long time ago, but I didn't expect to meet with some trouble on the way. I had just circled around Golden Inheritance Peak when I sensed Mu Qinghe's aura and came over. When this young master arrived, he had just woken up. As he spoke, he looked at Mu Qinghe and sized him up with some disdain. Looking at you, could it be that you've become stupid from the beating? You actually didn't notice this young master for so long? You've only been here for a short while and you've already regressed to this extent? Chu Luiyue felt slightly relieved. It seemed that Jian Fengqi didn't know what had happened previously. Mu Qinghe couldn't be bothered with Jian Fengqi and continued walking forward. Jian Fengqi raised his sword-like eyebrows and looked at Chu Luiyue. If he doesn't want to say, then you can say it. What exactly are you doing in this trip? Jian Fengqi. Mu Qinghe gave him a warning look. Jian Fengqi shrugged and tactfully drew a line across his mouth to indicate that he would shut up. However, he immediately walked towards Chu Luiyue and said with a smile, Miss Chu Luiyue, you seem to be injured as well. Young Miss Chu, you seem to be injured as well. Why don't I send you back? Don't worry, even if he dies, this young master will help to bring you back to the Tianling dynasty. Whoosh! A long sword suddenly pierced through the air towards them. Jian Fengqi easily dodged it. Mu Qinghe closed her eyes and finally turned around. You'd better not fall into my hands next time. Jian Fengqi proudly raised his eyebrows at Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue was speechless. Why didn't she know that the relationship between these two people had become so good? Digression, I don't know if it's my illusion, but why did Jian Fengqi and Mu Qinghe become inexplicably gay? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Iowa. Chapter 413. In the forest, the three of them walked forward in silence, and the atmosphere was inexplicably awkward. Mu Qinghe's face didn't look good from the start, and she looked like a moving human-shaped iceberg. Jian Fengqi was focused on thinking about how to get information from Mu Qinghe and Chu Luiyue. As for Chu Luiyue, she was trying to recall when the two of them had crossed paths. When exactly did it begin? In her previous life, her relationship with Jian Fengqi was definitely not good. She couldn't stand Jian Fengqi's unrestrained behavior, and Jian Fengqi laughed at her for being old-fashioned. In short, almost every time they met, it would end in an unpleasant mess. As for Mu Qinghe, he either followed her around or was handling military matters. He rarely interacted with anyone else, let alone Jian Fengqi. Sometimes, when Jian Fengqi was too arrogant, Mu Qinghe would take the initiative to ask to teach him a lesson. However, Chu Liwei stopped him most of the time. It wasn't that she didn't want to do it, but she was purely worried that Mu Qinghe wouldn't be able to control himself and would kill him. Jian Fengqi had a high status, and it would be quite troublesome if he were to die. I didn't expect the two of them to become friends after I died for more than a year. It was also very obvious that they trusted each other. She was certain that the two of them had not communicated much before this. She wondered what had happened in the past year or so after her death. But Chu Liwei thought about it again. I don't even know how Mu Qinghe betrayed me, so it's normal that I don't know about these things. Thinking of this, she lost interest as she curled her lips in self-mockery and threw this thought to the back of her head. Suddenly, Jian Fengqi thought of something and curiously asked, "Oh, right. Miss Chu, your fiancé Prince Li seems to be here too. Didn't you see him?" In the Imperial Mausoleum, there was dead silence in the dark and narrow tunnel. After Elder Yi spoke, Emperor Jiawen and Rong Jin were shocked as they looked in that direction in unison. There were actually two more people here? Seeing that the other party didn't respond, Mr. Yi said casually, "Looks like he's an acquaintance. That's why he doesn't want to show himself." Then he looked at Rong Jin. "Who did you come to Golden Inheritance Peak with?" Rong Jin's heart sank and he instinctively denied it. I came by myself." His whereabouts had already been exposed and he already had a guilty conscience. On top of that, he was frightened by Elder Ye's pressure, so he couldn't even say "this king." Old Man Yi shook his head and sighed. "Your Highness, are you still not willing to admit it at a time like this? Do His Majesty and I look so gullible?" Rong Jin guiltily looked down, clenched his teeth and felt very conflicted. Who could it be that followed him in? Only Situ Xingqian came with him. However, he had previously told her to wait outside, and Situ Xingqian had also agreed. It was fine if it wasn't her, but if it really was her, she would definitely be implicated. At that moment, Situ Xingqian's previous words suddenly surfaced in Rong Jin's mind. "Your Highness, you mustn't let outsiders know that Xingqian helped you. This way, even if His Majesty finds out that something is amiss, Xingqian can think of ways to help you out. After all, my father is still around. But if I'm also implicated, Father won't be able to say anything. Anyway, you must be careful." Rong Jin actually felt that it made sense. Now that Mother was dead, and he was in such a predicament, the only person he could rely on was Situ Xingqian. "I did come here alone," said Rong Jin with clenched teeth. Elder Yi looked at Rong Jin and felt that he was hopeless. Emperor Jiawen sneered. "Really? You can escape from Crown Prince Mansion on your own and come here secretly?" Rong Jin's face flushed red, but he still refused to say anything. Elder Yi couldn't be bothered to say anything else to him as he said to the two people hiding in the dark, "If you're still unwilling to come out, we can fight." Then the fan in his hand suddenly flew out. Choo! An air-piercing sound was heard. A sharp gust of wind swept in that direction in an instant. Honk! An equally strong force went up against it. The two forces harshly clashed against each other. The entire tunnel shook. A ball of white smoke suddenly spread out rapidly. Elder Ye's expression turned cold and he immediately wanted to follow. But the moment he took a step forward, he knitted his brows. "This smoke is poisonous." Emperor Jiawen and Rong Jin were caught off guard and had already inhaled a small amount of smoke, causing them to cough violently. Cough, cough, cough. Seeing the duo's reaction, Elder Ye's face turned even uglier. If he chased after them alone, he would most likely be able to catch the other party. But the remaining Emperor Jiawen and Rong Jin would definitely be in danger. The most important thing now is to get out of here and remove the poison in their bodies. Elder Yi looked in the direction that the duo had escaped in with much hatred. What a pity. He took out a jade bottle, quickly poured out 2 pills, and passed them to Emperor Jiawen and Rong Jin respectively. "Your Majesty, this poison is very dangerous. Use the mind-clearing pill to suppress it first. We have to get out as soon as possible." Emperor Jiawen took the pill and swallowed it. Rong Jin anxiously snatched the pill over and quickly swallowed it. Emperor Jiawen felt disgusted again. Rong Jin's son is really stupid and useless. When I return to the palace, I must punish him harshly. Old Man Yi led the two of them outside. "Elder Yi, why don't you chase after the duo first? I can get out alone." Emperor Jiawen actually really wanted to know who the duo that had escaped were. Never mind that the people who entered the Imperial Mausoleum were very capable, but how could he let the snakes and rats who followed behind them off? Elder Yi sighed. "Your Majesty, they're long prepared. It's too late to chase after them now. Let's check after we get out." But the two of them didn't even show their figures. Won't it be like finding a needle in a haystack to find them when we're outside? Rong Jin followed behind and heaved a sigh of relief. Elder Yi looked at Rong Jin with deep meaning. Not necessarily. Perhaps we'll find out the duo's identities very soon. Rong Jin felt a chill down his spine, and he instinctively lowered his head. The three of them continued on their original path. Probably because of the poison in the smoke, Emperor Jiawen and Rong Jin quickly lost their stamina, and they walked slower and slower. If it weren't for Elder Yi, the two of them really wouldn't be able to walk out of here. On the other end, Situ Xingqian and Elder Lian Ning quickly ran outside. Situ Xingqian bit her lips until they bled, and her eyes were filled with hatred. The Empress, that old witch, actually dared to lie to me. She never expected that Rong Jin wasn't heaven's chosen son. After so much trouble, everything was for naught. Elder Lian Ning's expression didn't look good, and he didn't say anything. He only heaved a sigh of relief when a light appeared in front of them. Your Highness, the exit is in front. Let's talk about everything after we get out. But at this point, a loud boom came from above the duo's heads. The circular board not far away started to close slowly. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 4:14. The exit is about to close, exclaimed Elder Lian Ning as he exchanged glances with Situ Xingqian. The two of them then immediately rushed forward. However, they were still one step too slow. Just as the two of them were about to take a step forward, the circular plate slowly but firmly closed. All the light was instantly blocked outside. The duo's vision turned pitch black again. Situ Xingqian used all her strength to push the stone wall, wanting to open it again. But no matter how much strength she used, the circular plate didn't move at all. This thing is closely connected to the entire mausoleum. It's impossible to open it with brute force. You can't use brute force, said Elder Lian Ning with a solemn face. Then what should we do? Won't we be trapped here? Situ Xingqian anxiously looked at him. Even you can't do anything? Elder Lian Ning stepped forward, placed his hand on the surface and carefully felt it. After a while he slowly shook his head. Unless we have the key, Situ Xingqian's heart sank. Doesn't that mean that only Emperor Jiawen and the rest have the chance to open it? Elder Lian Ning didn't say anything, but his silence already explained everything. The surroundings fell into dead silence. Situ Xingqian harshly hammered the surface and clenched her teeth. The duplicate key we took from the Empress is in Rong Jin's hands, but he didn't even use it. If I knew earlier, I would have kept it. After going back and forth for so long, I didn't expect it to be all for naught in the end. To think that I pretended to be obedient to Rong Jin for so long. When she recalled all those scenes, she was so disgusted that she wanted to vomit. Elder Lian Ning sighed and tried to persuade her. Who would have expected such a thing? Your Highness, don't waste your time and energy on such a person. It's not worth it to be angry over him. Actually, let alone you, even His Majesty. Situ Xingqian bit her lips tightly. Father carefully planned this for so long. If he knew that all of this was just a scam and that Rong Jin wasn't the so-called Heaven's chosen son, he would be so angry. The Heaven's chosen son is clearly someone else, but based on what I see, Rong Jin should have only found out today. If I didn't guess wrongly, the Empress should have made a mistake from the start, said Elder Lian Ning in deep thought. Situ Xingqian was previously in a fit of anger, but now that she had calmed down and thought about it carefully, there was really such a possibility. The Empress has painstakingly prepared for so many years. She must have treated Rong Jin as Heaven's chosen son. She knew what the Empress looked like before she died. The Empress must not know about this. She got off easy, muttered Situ Xingqian indignantly. If the Empress knew that all her hard work over the years was just a joke, how would she react? Unfortunately, she had killed her after she had obtained the duplicated key. The sooner she dies, the sooner she can be reincarnated. If she continues to live, she will definitely cause a lot of trouble. His Highness' decision was correct, Elder Lian Ning said. However, this did not make Situ Xingqian feel any better. But we can't get out of here. If they catch up with us. Before he could finish speaking, a biting cold aura suddenly came from behind him. Elder Lian Ning's expression hardened, and he immediately stood in front of Situ Xingqian. Counterattack at the same time. Boom. A ball of flame suddenly ignited. Elder Lian Ning's eyes narrowed. There was actually a spark hidden in Elder Ye's force. When the two parties' forces clashed, it immediately ignited. The fire crazily danced and lit up the surroundings like it was daytime. Elder Yi and the others finally saw the appearance of the two people standing in front of them. The elder's appearance was very unfamiliar, but the young lady behind him, who didn't manage to hide in time, was... Who else could it be but Situ Xingqian? Emperor Jiawen was shocked. It's actually you? Elder Yi didn't look shocked. Instead he chuckled. I didn't guess wrongly. After thinking about it, the person most likely to do this is her. Rong Jin opened his mouth, but he couldn't say anything. Situ Xingqian really lied to me. Not only did she secretly follow me in, but she also brought another person with her. It's obvious that she had planned this long ago. Situ Xingqian's face was very ugly. Forget about the others, but this Yi Zhiding is very difficult to deal with. It's impossible to lie to him. Both parties fell into an eerie silence and the atmosphere was tense. At this point, the sound of something moving could be heard. Situ Xingqian instinctively turned around, and her eyelids harshly twitched. She saw that the previously unmoving exit that was tightly shut actually started to slowly move. A white light shone in from the outside. Situ Xingqian, shouldn't you give me an explanation? Hollered Emperor Jiawen as he suppressed the anger in his heart. If he still didn't understand Situ Xingqian's intentions at this point, he didn't need to sit on the throne anymore. Situ Xingqian slowly clenched her fists in her sleeves, and she almost crushed her teeth from clenching them. When Golden Inheritance Peak was in chaos, Chu Luiyue and the other two had already silently left. Hearing Jian Fengqi's words, she paused in her footsteps. You're saying that wrong. Prince Li also came? Jian Fengqi's lips curved up into a sinister smile. Your fiancé is very worried about you. Once he heard that you left with Mu Qinghe, he immediately came to find you. He came even earlier than me. What? Didn't you see him? Thoughts flashed across Chu Liyue's mind, but he didn't show it on his face as he lightly smiled. Prince Li's body has always been weak, so it's normal for him to be slower. Jian Fengqi suddenly chuckled. Do you really think so? I think that his body is very healthy. Chu Liyue's expression remained calm. Prince Li is my fiancé, so I naturally know how his body is. Jian Fengqi only smiled as he placed his hands behind his head, clearly not thinking much of it. For some reason, Chu Liyue became anxious, but it wasn't because she was worried that Rong Xiu's abilities would be exposed. Jian Fengqi had always been very sensitive, so it wasn't surprising that he could sense that something was amiss with Rong Xiu. She was actually thinking about something else. According to Jian Fengqi, Rong Xiu had come to Golden Inheritance Peak before him, but she still hadn't seen Rong Xiu's figure. This was definitely not normal. She vaguely felt that something was wrong, but her mind was in a mess, and she couldn't figure it out no matter how hard she tried. After walking for a short while, a sound suddenly came from up ahead. The three of them looked up in unison. A horse carriage appeared before the three of them. Chu Luiyue immediately saw Umo sitting at the front of the carriage. That was the carriage of Prince Li's residence. Her heart suddenly rose to her throat as she stared at the curtain of the carriage. Umo saw her and immediately jumped down from the carriage in joy. Miss Liu, you really are here. Chu Liyue's eyes flickered as she asked. Where's His Highness? A fair and slender hand with distinct joints suddenly reached out from behind the curtain and gently lifted it. A noble, graceful, and incomparably enchanting face appeared before her eyes. He looked at her with a smile, his eyes clear and deep like the stars in the night sky, causing one to sink into them. This prince is here. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 4:15. Chu Liyue was stunned when she saw the face that suddenly appeared in front of her. Your Highness. Rong Xiu was really in the carriage? Rong Xiu sized her up without batting an eyelid. He frowned when he saw her messy and dirty appearance. Are you injured? Chu Liyue shook her head. Don't worry, Your Highness. I'm not injured. The one who's injured is Vice Admiral Mu. Rong Xiu seemed to have just noticed the presence of the two men beside her. His gaze was calm as he nodded in acknowledgement. Vice Admiral Mu, young Master Jian. Mu Qinghe didn't react, but Jian Fengqi smiled meaningfully. Your Highness Prince Li, you didn't come very quickly. Rong Xiu coughed twice while holding his fist. It's late autumn now and the weather is cold. It's troublesome for me to travel. Jian Fengqi didn't care about this statement. Rong Xiu's body was clearly fine and he wasn't weak at all. If he wanted to come, he would have arrived long ago. Was strange. He thought that Rong Xiu would rush to Golden Inheritance Peak immediately when he saw how nervous he was. He didn't expect him to only arrive now. He didn't know what Rong Xiu was doing, however, there was no conflict of interest between them. Moreover, Jian Fengqi was a little afraid of Rong Xiu, so he didn't say anything. Chu Liyue walked towards Rong Xiu. When she passed by Umo, she glanced at him lightly. Your Highness hasn't recovered yet. Why didn't you give him a hand warmer? Although the voice was faint, it sent a chill down Yumo's spine. This subordinate knows his mistake. His Highness had always claimed that he was sick. Every time he went out he would be fully armed. However, he came out in a hurry today and forgot about this. Besides, in this weather, there was no need for a hand warmer, Yumo thought to himself, but he didn't dare to show it on his face. He quickly stepped back respectfully. Chu Liyue walked to the side of the carriage. How is His Highness? Rong Xiu coughed softly. It's fine. Chu Liyue nodded in relief. That's good. If His Highness had relapsed because of looking for me, then you would feel very guilty. Jian Fengqi, who was standing behind them, was stunned when he heard their conversation. The corners of his mouth twitched. What are these two people doing? Everyone present could tell that Rong Xiu was pretending to be sick, but the two of them were acting so seriously. Weren't they too into the role? Rong Xiu stretched out his hand. Come up. Chu Liyue gently nodded and placed his hand on the other's palm. With a light leap they boarded the carriage. Rong Xiu then looked at Jian Fengqi and Mu Qinghe. This prince has been out for too long today. I'm not feeling well, so I'll take my leave first. Chu Liyue, who had just sat down in the carriage, paused and quickly glanced at him. Rong Xiu didn't seem to intend to let Mu Qinghe and Jian Fengqi leave with him. Jian Fengqi's mouth twitched even more. What did you say? Are you going to leave both of us here? Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows and smiled gently. Young Master Jian and Vice Admiral Mu are of noble status. It's beneath your dignity to sit in this prince's carriage. This time even Chu Liyue couldn't bear to listen anymore. He covered his mouth and coughed. Your Highness, Vice Admiral Mu is injured. It's more convenient to bring him back. Rong Xiu's smile deepened. However, Chu Liyue suddenly felt that the surrounding air had turned cold. If Vice Admiral Mu doesn't mind, then this prince would be more than happy to. Mu Qinghe, on the other hand, frowned and walked in another direction. Jian Fengqi was surprised and hurriedly followed. Hey, why are you leaving? Mu Qinghe's eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of frost as she walked forward without saying a word. Why are you acting so smug now? Before Jian Fengqi could finish speaking, he suddenly thought of something and stopped. Then he rubbed his eyebrows helplessly. I really don't know what kind of sins this young master committed in his previous life to have met a master and servant pair like you in this one. Mu Qinghe paused and looked at him coldly. His eyes contained a shocking murderous intent. Even if I'm injured now, killing you is as easy as flipping my hand. Jian Fengqi immediately took a step back and stared at him warily. I'm telling you, I'm here to help you today. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Qinghe suddenly raised his hand. A ball of green flame quickly flew out from his palm. It went straight for Jian Fengqi's face. Jian Fengqi immediately put his hands in front of him to block it. At the same time, a barrier flashed in front of him, blocking the green flame outside. Even so, he was still hit by the terrifying force and his feet sank deep into the ground. Jian Fengqi couldn't help but curse. You're serious? Didn't I just say master and servant? Didn't I just say, bite the hand that feeds you? He didn't do it on purpose. What's more, how long ago was that? When was there a need to mind? What's more hateful is that this guy is already injured to this extent, but his combat strength is still so strong. Jian Fengqi didn't know how many times he sighed in his heart. This guy's years of training in the army weren't in vain. Once he makes a move, he's going to kill someone. Mu Qinghe's vision turned black. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. His body couldn't take the sudden use of his force because of his serious injuries. But he still clenched his teeth and walked forward with a pale face, letting the wounds on his body tear open and drip blood. Jian Fengqi followed him with a headache. Fine. It's a slip of the tongue. My fault. It would be inappropriate if he really angered Mu Qinghe to death. Seeing the two's figures gradually disappear, Rong Xiu finally put down the curtain. Back to Prince Li's mansion. Yes. Yumo replied and jumped back into the carriage, waving the long whip in his hand. Giddy up. The wheels started rolling and the carriage went in another direction. Rong Xiu retracted his gaze and saw Chu Liyue sitting opposite him in a daze. His gaze deepened. You? After calling her twice, Chu Liyue finally came back to her senses. What's wrong? Rong Xiu's expression remained calm as he lightly asked, Why? What are you thinking about? Nothing. Chu Liyue shook her head and looked away. In fact, when she saw Jian Fengqi and Mu Qinghe arguing, she suddenly remembered something. Mu Qinghe didn't take the carriage. As for the reason, In fact, it was because there was once when they traveled together and took 2 carriages for convenience. In the end, they were ambushed halfway. Mu Qinghe was in the other carriage, so he couldn't rush to her side immediately. At that time she was only slightly injured, but Mu Qinghe knelt outside the palace for a day and a night to confess his sins. Since then he didn't take the carriage anymore. Rong Xiu suddenly held her hand. Chu Luiyue was startled and looked up at Rong Xiu. The two looked at each other. Her heart skipped a beat and she slowly said, "Actually, I was thinking, Your Highness, why did you come so late today?" Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 416. With Rong Xiu's capabilities, as long as he was willing, he could definitely reach here at the fastest speed without attracting anyone's attention. However, not only did he come so late, but he even sat in a horse carriage. This doesn't suit his style of doing things at all. Unless, he has other motives for doing this. The biggest possibility is that he's trying to hide it. Chu Luiyue looked at Rong Xiu, and her heart hung in midair. She vaguely had a vague guess in her heart. However, that was too ridiculous and too far-fetched, so she didn't even want to waste her energy to investigate further. But at this moment, Rong Xiu, who was sitting in the horse carriage and had arrived late, everything seemed to be showing something. Rong Xiu held her hand tightly. "I was delayed by some matters." Chu Luiyue raised her brows. "Oh, what matters?" "The Empress died," Rong Xiu said calmly. "The Empress has passed away." Chu Luiyue was stunned. "The Empress is actually dead. When did this happen?" "The news spread out today, but the exact time hasn't been confirmed. Lord Chuning is currently handling this matter in the palace, and Father seems to have ordered for the news to be sealed. However, for some reason the news still leaked out in the imperial city." Hearing that Chuning was in charge of this matter, Chu Luiyue knitted her brows even tighter. Emperor Jiawen hated the Empress to the core, and Chu Luiyue believed that he definitely wanted the Empress dead. However, it definitely shouldn't be now. Besides, the Empress was the mother of the country after all. Her sudden passing would definitely cause a huge commotion. Chuning had previously investigated Heptagon Alley, and he was already involved. "If anything happened to the Empress's matter, I'm afraid. Your Highness, do you know who leaked the news?" Rong Xiu shook his head. "The Empress's palace has always been heavily guarded, so many people know about this. There are many people, and it won't be easy to find out in such a short period of time. I've already sent people to suppress the news, but it won't drag on for long." Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. There was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in this world, let alone such shocking news. Why did the Empress leave so suddenly? Emperor Jiawen put her under house arrest to prevent her from doing anything overboard. On the other hand, he wanted to keep her alive. There were many things that had yet to be investigated, but she had suddenly died. It was really strange. It seems, it has something to do with third brother. Rong Xiu's expression was subtle. It is said that he was the last person to see the Empress. Not long after he left, the Empress died. Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes. "Does Your Highness mean that someone wants to frame His Highness?" Rong Xiu's thin lips curved slightly, and there seemed to be a galaxy swaying in his deep eyes. "You has always understood me the best." Chu Luiyue suddenly tilted his head and asked with great interest, "Then does Your Highness know what I'm thinking right now?" Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes. Chu Luiyue held his hand and leaned forward. The two of them were very close and they could hear each other's breathing. She could even see her small figure reflected in Rong Xiu's eyes. "Mu Qinghe brought me to Golden Air Peak's Imperial Mausoleum today. Guess who I met inside Rong Jin?" Rong Xiu smiled and wasn't surprised. He did leave Crown Prince Mansion today. Chu Luiyue wasn't surprised that Rong Xiu knew about this. After experiencing so many things, she had long realized that Rong Xiu was even more mysterious and powerful than she thought. But do you know why he came to the Imperial Mausoleum? Because he thought he was Heaven's chosen son. When Chu Luiyue said the last few words, she slowed down. Actually, he knew about this long ago, but he came to the Imperial Mausoleum today. At first, I didn't understand why, but I understood when I heard you say that the Empress had passed away. I think Rong Jin suddenly found out something after the Empress died, so he didn't hesitate to go against His Majesty's orders and secretly came here. But, according to my observations, he's Heaven's chosen son, and he doesn't seem like much. On the other hand, the other person I met, he's very familiar with the Imperial Mausoleum." Rong Xiu raised his brows. Chu Luiyue looked at him as if she wanted to see through the ripples in the deepest part of his eyes. "That person is as capable as you. He's even comparable to Mu Qinghe. It's a pity." I didn't see what he looked like. Chu Luiyue said in a seemingly smiling manner. I don't know why, but that person doesn't seem willing to let me see his face. Your Highness, don't you think it's weird? Rong Xiu looked calm, and he was about to speak when a strong aura rapidly approached from outside. The horse suddenly whinnied and raised its front hooves. Umo immediately pulled the reins and forcefully stabilized it. The horse carriage shook violently and stopped. Chu Luiyue knitted her brows and she was about to take a look when her body fell forward due to inertia. Rong Xiu grabbed her slender waist. The two of them switched positions. Bang! A grunt was heard. Chu Luiyue felt that she had bumped into something. When she opened her eyes, she realized that Rong Xiu had fallen down, and she was lying in his arms. There were only a few layers of clothes between the two of them. Chu Luiyue could hear his strong heartbeat and even clearly feel his body temperature. She was about to speak when Rong Xiu's fingers suddenly landed on her lips. The moment they touched, the two of them were dazed. Actually, the two of them had slept on the same bed many times before, but for some reason, in this small and enclosed space, such proximity gave rise to an ambiguous feeling. Rong Xiu almost instinctively used his fingertips to gently rub against her lips. It was unbelievably soft. His gaze instantly darkened. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat, and she quickly got up. Rong Xiu sighed softly in his heart, but he did not show it on his face. He propped himself up and lifted the curtain with one hand. Chu Luiyue's gaze turned and followed his line of sight. She saw a familiar figure standing not far from the horse carriage. Seeing that person's face, Chu Luiyue exclaimed, "Second Master Yen? Why are you here?" The person who came was actually Yen Gu. Seeing Rong Xiu beside Chu Luiyue, Yen Gu inexplicably shuddered. Why was there a murderous intent? The warm and eager smile on his face froze. Miss Luyu, that. Our first master said that he had something to do today and left first. The previous agreement still stands. When the time is right, he will naturally come and find you. Please don't worry. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Your first master has already left? Yen Gu nodded. Yes. I just sent the first master off and rushed over to see you. Chu Luiyue's brows furrowed slightly. Could it be that her previous guess was wrong? Rong Xiu leaned back, his tone languid. So you not only met an unexpected person in the Imperial Mausoleum, but also had an appointment with him? Digression, husband and wife drama. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 417. Chu Luiyue turned to Yen Gu and said, Thank you, Second Master Yen. I'll definitely thank you personally when I see you in the future. Yen Gu chuckled. Then if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. I won't disturb Prince Li and Miss Luyu. With that, he quickly left. Chu Luiyue blinked. Why did she feel that Yen Ji's footsteps were a little hurried, as if he couldn't wait to leave? Rong Xiu glanced at Umo indifferently. Umo immediately straightened his back and rode the horse forward again. Rong Xiu then put down the curtain and nonchalantly said, I'm sorry. So the person you met in the Imperial Mausoleum is the head of Zhenbao Pavilion. Chu Luiyue retracted her gaze. Your Highness, do you know this person? Rong Xiu's lips curved slightly. Not really. I've only heard some rumors. Chu Luiyue looked at him meaningfully, but he looked indifferent. She couldn't tell anything from the beginning. Maybe she was overthinking? This person has helped me several times. It was also because of his help today that I was able to get out successfully. But how did your Highness find this place? Rong Xiu paused for a moment, but he quickly returned to normal. Shui knows you're here. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. The five senses of a magical beast had always been very sharp. Shui had always liked to be with her and was familiar with her scent. It was normal for her to find this place. I haven't seen Shui for a long time. Why did Mu Qinghe bring you here? Rong Xiu asked. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment and shook her head. It seems like he's looking for something. In fact, she really didn't know what Mu Qinghe was planning to do. He was most likely going for the pyramid, but what exactly was that? What was the use of him coming here? The strangest thing was, why did he bring her along for such an important and secretive matter? Chu Luiyue only felt that there was a thick fog in front of him. Rong Xiu said, We've caused quite a commotion this time. Imperial Father will probably step up the search. The fewer people who know that you and Mu Qinghe have been here, the better. Chu Luiyue came back to his senses and nodded. After Emperor Jiawen and the rest walked out of the Imperial Mausoleum's passageway, Elder Yi immediately sent out a message. Zhongqi and the others who had been waiting bitterly at the top of the mountain immediately rushed over when they saw the signal. When they saw the few people standing behind Emperor Jiawen and Elder Yi, Zhongqi and the others were shocked. When did these people barge into Golden Inheritance Peak? He didn't know the other two people, but he would never mistake Crown Prince Rongjin for someone else. However, the Crown Prince, who had always been high-spirited, was now in a very sorry state. The young woman and the old man beside him didn't look any better. Mr. Yi asked. During this period of time, did anyone else come out of the Imperial Mausoleum other than us? Zhongqi immediately bowed. I've sent more people to guard Golden Inheritance Peak, but I didn't see any traces of anyone. Emperor Jiawen's face was pale because of the poison, but it was also a little green because of his anger. From now on, keep a close watch. Once you find anything amiss, immediately report to me. He didn't believe that the two of them could really stay inside forever. Zhongqi and the rest didn't dare to ask why Rongjin and the rest would appear here, so they could only agree. Elder Yi, who was at the side, turned around to take a look and waved the fan in his hands. The people inside have extraordinary means, so it's easy for them to leave this place silently. However, Emperor Jiawen is still angry, so there's no need to say this. Perhaps the person inside had already left. Who knows? Elder Yi smiled helplessly and shook his head. Even though I didn't see them, a strong warrior of that level, Country Yaoqin really can't afford to offend them. I don't know how Sidu Xingqian and the rest offended them, but the exit didn't close earlier or later. It just had to close when they were about to escape, trapping them inside. They clearly did it on purpose. His gaze swept across Situ Xingqian and the rest. It's going to be interesting this time. Almost overnight, the situation in the imperial capital had changed. First, the empress passed away. Then, Rongjin was disrespectful to the ancestors and was stripped of his position as the crown prince. These two things happened consecutively and everyone was caught off guard. For a moment, all sorts of guesses were made. Some people said that the Empress and His Majesty had been very loving all these years, and her health had always been very good. It was really strange that she suddenly passed away. Rongjin had been the crown prince for so many years, and His Majesty had always thought highly of him. Even when he made a mistake and was scolded in public, His Majesty didn't strip him of his position as the crown prince. However, right after the Empress died, Rongjin was stripped of his position. How could people not be suspicious? Some people also said that the Empress was in charge of the harem and looked very harmonious, but quite a few concubines and princes had died in her hands. His Majesty couldn't take it anymore, so he finally killed her. Rongjin was implicated and His Majesty hated him. In the end, he was scolded. However, the most ferocious rumor was that the third prince, Rongjio, had something to do with the Empress's death. As his birth mother, noble Lady Ying, was harmed by the Empress back then, Rongjio had long hated the Empress and waited for an opportunity to kill her. As for Rongjin, in the past few months, he had been scolded by His Majesty and was even put under house arrest. His position as the crown prince only existed in name, and it was only a matter of time before he was stripped of his position. Even though the higher-ups strictly ordered everyone not to talk about this matter and used all sorts of methods to suppress these rumors, Country Xing Luo's Emperor Xian Kong, Situ Yan's arrival made the entire matter even more confusing. In the darkness, there seemed to be an invisible hand that easily controlled everything and made the waves even more turbulent. Palace. In the palace, Situ Yan and Emperor Jiawen were facing each other. Situ Yan's expression was cold. I'll say it again. Hand over Xingqian and Lian Ning and cancel her marriage agreement with Rongjin. If not, Country Xing Luo won't let this matter rest. Emperor Jiawen seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. Ah, Situ Yan, you really have the cheek to say this. You, and that precious daughter of yours, do you still need me to say what kind of good things you did in private? From start to end you've always had ulterior motives. Now that the matter has been exposed, you still dare to openly come and ask for them. No wonder Situ Yan kept mentioning the marriage alliance since a long time ago. No wonder he doesn't care about the others and only values Rongjin. Previously, I naively thought that Situ Yan came for Rongjin's position as the crown prince. Now that I think about it, why would he, as Country Xing Luo's emperor, want this? At that time he was really blinded by lard. When Situ Yan received the news, he already knew that the matter had been completely exposed. Thus, he didn't care at all when he heard Emperor Jiawen say this. I came here just to bring Situ Xingqian away. To think that I painstakingly planned for so long, but I didn't expect Rongjin to be a fake heaven's chosen son. I don't even know who I'm supposed to vent my anger and resentment on. Does this mean that you're not willing to hand her over? Emperor Jiawen sneered. Hand her over? The two of them are a match made in heaven. Of course I have to fulfill their wish. Once the Empress's 1-month mourning period is over, I'll let them get married. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 418. Situ Yen widened his eyes in shock. Rongxiao, are you crazy? The Empress is the mother of the country, and they have to hold a national funeral after she passes away. As her son, Rong Jin should be filial for 3 years. Even if there's an emergency, it should be at least a year. A month? Isn't that equivalent to holding a wedding while stepping on the Empress's coffin? Do you still want your face? Do you still want your reputation? If you really do this, not only will Rong Jin and Situ Xingqian be labeled as traitors, but even the entire country Yao Chen's royal family's reputation will be affected. Even if you don't want your face, I still want it. Since he already knew that Rong Jin wasn't the real Heaven's chosen son, why would he agree to continue with the marriage agreement? Situ Xingqian was the apple of his eye, and she was the daughter that he doted on the most. How could she marry a useless crown prince like Rong Jin? Wouldn't her entire life be over? Seeing Situ Yan's exasperated look, Emperor Jiawen felt good. This old thing kept scheming, but he shot himself in the foot in the end. I have to get back at him no matter what. You were the one who suggested this marriage. Are you going to break it now? Situ Yan was so angry that his liver hurt. So what if I break it? If we break the marriage agreement right after Rong Jin got into trouble, people will definitely criticize us. Even so, it's better than Situ Xingqian's entire life. Emperor Jiawen leaned against the chair. The things that had happened during this period of time had exhausted him, but now that he saw Situ Yan being angered to such an extent, his mood finally eased a little. There's no room for discussion. The marriage agreement will continue. Situ Xingqian will get married in the imperial city a month later. Don't worry, Rong Jin is my son after all. I'll definitely let my subordinates handle this wedding grandly. Situ Yan's vision turned black and he almost fainted. Rongxiao. He had made up his mind to keep Situ Xingqian here until the wedding with Rong Jin was over. Rongxiao, don't go overboard. Don't think that Xing Luo is afraid of you. Situ Yan took a deep breath to calm himself down. With a gloomy expression he said, Elder Zhongyi is still in the Star Luo Empire. If he finds out that you did this, who are you threatening? Mockery appeared on Emperor Jiawen's face. Elder Zhongyi is very powerful, but do you think that it'll be enough just because he's here? Don't forget, Elder Zhongyi represents Mingyue Tianshan. Situ Yan's eyes were red. If you can invite the people from Mingyue Tianshan, can't we? Situ Yan was stunned. Only then did he remember that Rong Xiu had also stayed at Mingyue Tianshan for many years. Even though outsiders thought that Rong Xiu was just a sickly person, he had heard Situ Xingqian mention before that Rong Xiu wasn't like what the rumors said. The most important thing was that Rong Xiu had stayed in Mingyue Tianshan for so long. If he was willing, he would naturally be able to get a backer. He might even be more powerful than Elder Zhongyi. Using this as a threat was completely ineffective. The veins on Situ Yan's forehead popped up. He had never been humiliated like this before. Rongxiao, do you really want the two countries to go to war? Said Situ Yan in a low voice. Emperor Jiawen looked up, crossed his arms in front of him and smiled. Situ Yan, do you dare? Your Highness, here's your tea. Come in. Creak. The door was pushed open and a page boy in gray walked in with a cup of tea. He then carefully placed the tea at the side. Rong Jiu was wiping his knife. He was very focused and he was very serious about every step. This knife was actually just a normal knife, but he had always treasured it. This was because he used this knife when he killed someone on the battlefield for the first time. That was the first time he personally chopped off someone's head. When the knife landed, it could instantly take the other party's life. The sticky and fishy blood splattered all over his face. Many people would have different reactions after killing someone for the first time. Some would vomit and some would have nightmares. But he didn't. On the contrary, he only felt satisfied. So many years had passed, but this knife was still bright and sharp. Your Highness, this tea won't taste good when it's cold, reminded the page boy respectfully. Rong Jiu paused in his actions and glanced at him. Please enjoy. I'll take my leave first. After he finished speaking, the servant silently left and closed the door. Rong Jiu's gaze landed on the cup of tea. He put the knife in his hand to the side, picked up the tea, got up, walked to a bonsai and poured the tea into it. Then he felt for the bottom of the teacup and gently clicked it. Gotcha. An extremely thin layer popped open and a piece of paper fell out. It turned out that there was an extremely small mechanism hidden at the bottom of the teacup. Even though the piece of paper was very small, the words on it were very clear. Everything is ready. Rongjio made up his mind. He moved his fingers and the piece of paper was crushed into powder. He gently raised it and it disappeared with the wind. Chuning was so busy these few days that he didn't even go home. Chu Luiyue also didn't return to the academy and stayed at home alone. After the news of the empress's death and the crown prince's dethronement spread, she vaguely had a premonition. Situ Yan's arrival also confirmed her guess. Emperor Jiawen already knew that Rong Jin and Situ Xingqian secretly followed him into the imperial mausoleum that day. This matter was the last straw that broke the camel's back, and it finally made Emperor Jiawen decide to take action. The Xi family seemed to be implicated as well. Quite a few people were removed from their positions and some were even sent to jail. Anyone with eyes could tell that this definitely had something to do with the empress. The Xi family didn't resist at all as they silently accepted everything and kept a low profile. Their position as the leader of the four major families was on the verge of collapse. However, this wasn't what Chu Luiyue was most concerned about. She just felt that something was very strange. Since Emperor Jiawen knew that Rong Jin and Situ Xingqian went to the imperial mausoleum that day, he would definitely follow this clue and find something. The empress's death was most likely related to Situ Xingqian. But until now there wasn't any news. On the other hand, the third prince, Rongjio, was splashed with dirty water for no reason, and the rumors became more and more intense. Almost everyone believed that he was the one who was most deeply involved in this matter. Emperor Jiawen wasn't dumb. If he really wanted to investigate, he could definitely find something. But now, he was actually allowing this matter to develop. I heard that Rongjio is also under house arrest. Chu Luiyue felt that something was amiss no matter how she thought about it. Also, that pyramid. Even though it's on me, I still don't know what it is. No matter how she thought about it, she didn't have a clue. In the end, Chu Luiyue decided to make a trip to Heptagon Alley personally. The empress must know something. Now that she's already dead, Situ Xingqian and Rong Jin can't ask her, so I might as well check it out myself. But when she reached Heptagon Alley, she saw a floor full of corpses. Those were the imperial guards guarding this place. Chu Luiyue's heart sank as she immediately pushed open the door and entered. The blood-colored bronze cauldron that was previously placed in the middle of the yard had actually disappeared. Digression. I'm going out in the afternoon, so I'll update later for the rest of the day. Let's all watch it together at night. Mobile users, please browse and read. Chapter 419. The corpse that she saw previously was still hanging in midair, but there was nothing below it. There were traces of a fight in the yard and a few Imperial Guards' corpses. The barrier around Heptagon Alley had also been broken. It was obvious that someone had forcefully broken in. Chu Luiyue immediately searched the yard, but she didn't find any useful clues. The only thing she could be sure of was that these people had died less than a day ago. No matter if it was outside or inside, these dead Imperial Guards didn't have many wounds on their bodies. All of them had their necks slit and they were killed in one hit. This was clearly a one-sided massacre. Chu Luiyue carefully checked their corpses and gradually knitted her brows. It seemed like the Imperial Guards didn't even have time to retaliate. Even though these people weren't the best, they were all well-trained. To be able to kill so many people at the same time and not even give them a chance to spread the news, it was either that the other party had a lot of people or they were very strong. Chu Luiyue was more inclined to the latter. The Imperial City had been heavily guarded recently. If so many people really came, the commotion from both parties' fight would have spread out long ago. It wouldn't be like now, where there were corpses everywhere but nobody knew about it. If she didn't coincidentally rush over today, she didn't know when this situation would have been discovered. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment and went straight to the palace. The palace was heavily guarded, but thankfully Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu had a marriage agreement. As Prince Li's future princess consort, the palace maids naturally let her in. Chu Luiyue didn't go to find Emperor Jiawen. Instead, she went straight to the empress's bedroom. On the way, she acutely felt that the atmosphere in the palace was very stiff and strange. Everyone had become very careful. It was obvious that the empress and Rong Jin's matter made them jittery. Halfway there, Chu Luiyue bumped into a group of people. The person in front was Chu Ning. After not seeing him for a few days, he looked much more haggard and tired. It was obvious that he had been very worried during this period. Father. Chu Luiyue quickly stepped forward. Hearing this familiar voice, Chu Ning immediately looked up and saw Chu Luiyue. His eyes flashed with surprise, but then he frowned. Why are you here? Chu Luiyue walked up to him. Father, I have something important to tell you. Chu Ning looked at her expression and suddenly felt a sense of unease in his heart. Had always been very sensible. If it was not an urgent matter, she would absolutely not run to the palace to look for him at this time. He whispered a few words to the people behind him, then led Chu Luiyue to the side. What happened? Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. Father, the Imperial Guards in charge of guarding Heptagon Alley have all been killed. As for the bronze cauldron in the Heptagon Alley, it has already been stolen and its whereabouts are unknown. What? Chu Ning's face was filled with shock. He expected that something bad must have happened, but he didn't expect that. When did this happen? Chu Luiyue briefly explained the matter. Chu Ning's expression became more and more unsightly. In other words, we still don't know who did it? And there are no clues at all? Chu Luiyue gently nodded. I know that His Majesty places great importance on the Heptagon Alley, and it just so happens that you have been in charge of it recently, so I immediately rushed over after the incident. Chu Ning's face seemed to have condensed a layer of frost. These few days he had been busy in the palace dealing with the Empress's matters, so he temporarily put the Heptagon Alley matter aside and handed it over to his subordinates to handle. But he didn't expect that such a thing would happen. Even if His Majesty ordered him to stay in the palace and solve the problem here first, he couldn't absolve himself from the blame. Alright, I understand. I will report to His Majesty now. Chu Ning quickly made a decision. His Majesty would find out about this matter sooner or later. Even if he would be punished, he had to take the initiative to face it. You go back first? Chu Luiyue shook her head. I'll go with you, father. I am the first person to discover this matter, so there is no reason for me not to go. Chu Ning was a little hesitant. This matter involves a lot of things and I don't want you to be dragged into it. According to his investigations these few days, he had already faintly felt that the Empress should have played a big game when she was alive. Although she was now dead, the matter was far from over. Especially now, the bronze cauldron in the Heptagon Alley had mysteriously disappeared. No matter how he looked at it, he hoped that you could stay out of this matter. Chu Luiyue's lips curved. From the moment I went to the Heptagon Alley, it was already difficult for me to get away easily. But father, don't worry, I know what to do. I know what to do and what not to do. Chu Ning looked at her with a deep gaze. How could he not know that this was actually her excuse? The real reason was, if she could appear to a large extent, His Majesty's punishment would be reduced to a large extent. Chu Ning felt a wave of warmth and finally nodded. All right. Come with me to see His Majesty. Chu Luiyue walked beside Chu Ning, and the Imperial Guards behind them were very perceptive and kept a distance from the two of them. Originally, Chu Luiyue wanted to ask about the Empress's situation, but after thinking about it, he suppressed the words. After walking for about 15 minutes, the group finally arrived at Xiaoyang Hall. The strange thing was that it was currently daytime, but the door of Xiaoyang Hall was tightly shut. The number of Imperial Guards outside the hall was also twice as compared to usual, and they looked like they were ready to fight. Chu Ning stopped in his tracks. Eunuch Min, who was guarding outside the hall, saw Chu Ning and knew that he had come to report to His Majesty. But then he saw Chu Luiyue standing beside Chu Ning. Eunuch Min's heart skipped a beat. Why is she here at this time? He hurriedly walked over with small steps. Lord Chu Ning, His Majesty is dealing with important matters at this time, please wait a moment. After that he looked at Chu Luiyue. Miss Lu Luiyue, why are you here today? Chu Luiyue concisely said, My Majesty has something to tell His Majesty. I have something important to report to His Majesty with my father. Eunuch Min, you don't have to worry. We'll just wait here. Eunuch Min was a shrewd person. When he saw Chu Luiyue and Chu Ning's expressions, he felt that something was amiss. Hence, he didn't ask in detail and left after saying a few words. But the moment he walked back, the door was suddenly opened from the inside. Bang! A middle-aged man in a black brocade robe walked out from within. His face was very gloomy, and he exuded an imposing aura that prevented strangers from getting close. When Eunuch Min saw him, he immediately respectfully took a step back. However, that man didn't care about him at all and just walked out with big strides. Looking at that face, Chu Luiyue slightly narrowed her eyes. This face looks a little familiar. Suddenly her eyes lit up. This man is 50% similar to Situ Xingqian. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 420. This person must be Country Xing Luo's Xiankang Emperor, Situ Yan. It seems like he didn't have a good conversation with Emperor Jiawen, and he's probably at a disadvantage. If not, he definitely wouldn't show such an expression in front of so many people. He's an emperor after all. If he didn't encounter something unbearable, he wouldn't have such a reaction. Chu Luiyue was a little curious. I don't know what Emperor Jiawen said or did to make Situ Yen so angry. Situ Yen walked past them. Suddenly, Situ Yen paused in his footsteps and turned to look at Chu Luiyue. You're Chu Luiyue? Chu Luiyue's eyes sparkled. That's weird. This person actually knows me? She lowered her head and curtsied. Situ Yan's gaze was like a sharp knife that scraped across Chu Luiyue's body. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. It seems like Situ Yan doesn't have a good impression of me. Chu Ning stepped forward and silently blocked in front of Chu Luiyue, blocking Situ Yan's vision. Situ Yan grunted and turned to leave. When his figure gradually disappeared, Chu Ning turned around and asked worriedly, Chu Luiyue? When did you offend this person? Chu Luiyue chuckled and shrugged. It's my first time seeing him today. How could I have the chance to offend him? But I did offend his precious daughter. Situ Xingqian? Chu Ning nodded in understanding. Chu Luiyue looked at his relieved expression and asked curiously, Aren't you worried? What's there to worry about? What's there to worry about? Chu Ning snorted. How can his daughter be compared to my Yuer? He vaguely knew that Situ Xingqian seemed to be interested in Rong Xiu, but Rong Xiu married Yuer. Wasn't it obvious why Situ Xingqian treated his Yuer that way? In Chu Ning's eyes, all the women in the world added together weren't as good as his precious Yuer. Other things aside, Rong Xiu had excellent foresight. Chu Luiyue was speechless. Why did she hear a trace of pride in his words? Chu Ning is here. Let him in. Emperor Jiawen's voice came from Zhaoyang Palace. Eunuch Min hurriedly said, Your Majesty, Miss Luyu is also here. She said that she has something important to report. There was a moment of silence. Then let her come in with us. Chu Ning and Chu Luiyue looked at each other, their expressions turning solemn as they entered Zhaoyang Hall one after another. Upon entering the palace, Chu Luiyue immediately saw Emperor Jiawen, who was sitting at the head of the table. The expression on his face seemed to be better than a few days ago. It was obvious that he had vented his anger at Situ Yan. Luyu, you don't come to the palace often. What brings you here today? His tone was relaxed, and it was obvious that he didn't care much about Chu Luiyue's arrival. Chu Luiyue and Chu Ning exchanged glances before they stepped forward. Your Majesty, Luyu came here today because of Heptagon Alley? Upon hearing the words Heptagon Alley, Emperor Jiawen's expression froze, and he unwittingly sat up straight as he stared at Chu Luiyue. What did you say? Chu Luiyue paused for a moment before she told him everything. However, she changed her reason for going to Heptagon Alley to that she happened to pass by there. She didn't want Emperor Jiawen to know that she was secretly investigating this matter. Emperor Jiawen was stunned when he heard the first sentence. He spent a lot of effort to suppress his urge to flip the table and stand up, but the veins on his hands, which were grabbing onto the chair, were popping up. His face was green and white and it was very interesting. Chu Luiyue had long expected his reaction, so she pretended that she didn't notice it and calmly told him what happened. As this is a serious matter, Luyu didn't dare to act on his own, so he immediately rushed over. Chu Ning immediately knelt down and asked for forgiveness. It's all my fault for causing this situation. Please punish me, Your Majesty. Emperor Jiawen slowly held his forehead and didn't say anything for a long time. Chu Ning and Chu Luiyue waited quietly. Actually, Emperor Jiawen's emotions were very complicated at this point, and his mind was in a mess. He originally thought that the truth of this matter would gradually be revealed after the Empress died and Rong Jin was removed from his position. But now, something like this actually happened. His first reaction was to suspect Situ Xingqian. After all, he had basically confirmed that Situ Xingqian secretly met the Empress and learned quite a lot from her. She even obtained the key that the Empress secretly engraved when she was alive, which allowed Rong Jin to successfully enter Golden Inheritance Peak. She was very ambitious, so it wasn't strange for her to do such a thing. But the key point was that Situ Xingqian was currently trapped somewhere. This clearly meant that she didn't steal the bronze cauldron. As for Situ Yan, it didn't seem very likely either. This time, as the matter was urgent, Situ Yan rushed over at the fastest speed and only brought a few personal guards with him. The other party is very strong and they clearly came prepared. This matter can't be entirely blamed on you. Emperor Jiawen suppressed the ripples in his heart with much difficulty as he slowly spoke. Immediately bring someone to Heptagon Alley and check if you can find any clues. Once you're done, report to me immediately. Yes. As for Luyu, since you're the first to see it, I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you to make this trip as well. Chu Luiyue said, Your Majesty, don't worry. Don't worry, Your Majesty. I'll do my best. Emperor Zhou nodded and suddenly asked, "Oh, right. This won't take up too much of your time and energy, right?" On Vice Admiral Mu's side. "You have to prioritize him for everything, okay?" Chu Luiwei agreed, but he chuckled in his heart. "Even if we're already in a mess, we still don't dare to easily offend Mu Qinghe. If Emperor Zhou knew that the two people who entered the Imperial Mausoleum were actually me and Mu Qinghe, I wonder what his expression would be. I'm a little tired. You guys can leave first." Emperor Zhou waved his hands and Chu Ning brought Chu Luiwei out. After walking out of Zhaoyang Palace, Chu Luiwei suddenly asked, "Why? Father, can I go to the Empress's bedroom to take a look?" Chu Ning was taken aback. "Why are you going there?" Chu Luiwei pondered for a moment and smiled. "I might be able to help you find some useful clues." However, Chu Ning shook his head solemnly. "The Empress's funeral is tomorrow. It's not appropriate for you to go now." He still wanted to cleanly separate Chu Luiwei from this matter. Seeing his determined attitude, Chu Luiwei didn't continue and changed the topic. The group of people left the palace together and went straight to Heptagon Alley. Princely Mansion. "Master, a portion of the Northwest Army has already gone to the Imperial City," said Umo softly said. "They'll reach here in at most 3 days." Rong Xiu looked nonchalant as he flipped a page of his book. "How many people are coming?" "Not many, just 5,000. However, almost all of them are the Northwest Army's elites, and they've killed their way out of the battlefield. They can fight against 10 people each. Even though there are more Imperial guards in the Imperial City, the outcome is still uncertain if the two sides really fight. Besides, there are reinforcements behind." Rong Xiu's lips curved up slightly. "Rong Jiu won't fight an unprepared battle. Besides, I want him to win." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 421. Mu Qinghe and Jian Fengqi also returned to the imperial capital together without attracting anyone's attention. As soon as he returned, Mu Qinghe shrank himself in the room. Jian Fengqi originally wanted to take a look at his injuries, but he was refused entry. His temper was not good to begin with, and seeing Jian Fengqi like this, his patience was exhausted. He was too lazy to care and went to do his own things. Mu Qinghe stayed in the room and simply treated his wounds alone. There was no expression on his face and he looked like a piece of wood. However, in his mind, everything that happened in the Imperial Mausoleum was constantly replaying. Especially, that illusion. Even if he knew that everything was just an illusion, every time he thought about it, his heart would still stir. Especially when he was alone and quiet, all kinds of images seemed to flash before his eyes, and his ears were filled with noise. Mu Qinghe closed his eyes in annoyance, but found that that person's face was becoming clearer and clearer. She still had a smile on her face. "Qinghe, why did you call this consort?" Her voice was clear and gentle, and every word entered his ears. Mu Qinghe's heart seemed to be poked by something, and it was extremely sour. But soon the smile on her face disappeared, and it was replaced by shock and disbelief. "Qinghe, you betrayed this consort?" The bright starlight in her eyes gradually dissipated, and endless disappointment and sorrow surged. Mu Qinghe suddenly opened his eyes. In a short time he was actually covered in cold sweat. The sweat and blood mixed together and it was painful. He stood up, planning to clean himself up first. However, just as he took a step, his expression suddenly changed and he stopped. A bronze mirror flew out from his body. He was blocking his way out. An endless sea of blood surged. A terrifying aura came, covering the sky and earth. Mu Qinghe's body swayed and he knelt on the ground. An intense bone-piercing pain came from his heart. He grabbed the clothes in front of his chest tightly, desperately pressing down, but it could not alleviate the pain even a little. "Where is it?" A cold and majestic voice came from within. Mu Qinghe clenched his teeth, sweat dripping from his forehead, and his lips trembling, pale. This subordinate is incompetent, unable to snatch the thing. Trash. The pain that was several times more intense instantly swept through his entire body. Mu Qinghe finally could not help but groan, and he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. This time he could not even speak a complete sentence. "But you can't even do one thing that I asked you to do. Mu Qinghe, when did your abilities deteriorate so much? Or, did you do it on purpose?" This subordinate did not. Mu Qinghe's body trembled as he spat out these words with much difficulty. Just with this sentence alone, he had used up all his remaining strength. You've been outside for long enough. If you don't come back soon, you'll definitely arouse suspicion. So, you must return as possible. Even though Mu Qinghe was in extreme pain, he still heard this sentence clearly. But that thing, since you don't have the ability to snatch it, staying here is just a waste of time. You don't have to care about this anymore. Mu Qinghe's lips trembled. No, he had fought so hard to get this opportunity, how could he just let it go like this? This subordinate knows that it was snatched away by a mysterious person. What mysterious person? Mu Qinghe's words had obviously attracted the other party's attention. That person, this subordinate did not see that person's appearance? But, if I see him again, I will definitely recognize him, his aura? Mu Qinghe stammered out a sentence. Please let this subordinate continue. This subordinate will not let you down? At the end, Mu Qinghe was so weak that even his voice could not be heard clearly. But these words were obviously useful. In that case, I will give you a few more days. If there is no progress, you know the consequences. With that, the bronze mirror quickly disappeared. In the room, only Mu Qinghe was left. He was lying on the ground. His clothes were soaked and he looked extremely embarrassed. A green shadow appeared beside him. It was Hong Yao. It moved to Mu Qinghe's side and rubbed against his face before burying its head in his chest again. It had always been arrogant and noisy, wanting to disturb the world. But at this time, it was unusually quiet, quietly accompanying Mu Qinghe. I'm fine. Mu Qinghe whispered. Hong Yao's wings moved. It looked up at him, wanting to say something but stopped. But in the end, it said nothing. Chu Luiyue returned to Heptagon Alley with Chu Ning, but this time they still did not find anything. When it was over, it was already late, so Chu Ning asked her to go home. Chu Luiyue knew that he had to go back and continue the investigation, but it was really inappropriate for her to follow him, so she did not insist. The night was dark and the bright moon hung high in the sky. Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged in her room, absorbing the heaven and earth force around her. After breaking through to rank 3 in the Imperial Mausoleum, her strength had obviously improved a lot. But because the advancement was too sudden, she was worried that it would cause her foundation to be unstable, so she focused on cultivating again. Sensing that the aura in her body had stabilized, Chu Luiyue could not help but look at her palm. After the upgrade of the Yuan Meridian, the speed at which she absorbed the heaven and earth force had obviously increased. This would obviously be of great benefit to her future cultivation. What she lacked the most now was time. It turned out that she wanted to wait until she had recovered enough strength before going to the Tianling dynasty to seek revenge on those people. But she did not expect that she would go as a rank 3 warrior. With her level and strength, there would be a lot of trouble when she went there. Suddenly, there was a fluctuation in her dantian. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 422. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Only then did she realize that the fluctuation was actually emitted from the Black Pyramid. A vast and warm power instantly spread towards Chu Luiyue's limbs and bones. Chu Luiyue was shocked. For some reason, the aura contained in this power was very familiar. Chu Luiyue held her breath and focused her mind. She realized that the seal was not broken. After that, she carefully sensed it and finally confirmed that this power did not come from the pyramid, but from the black seal that covered the pyramid. Chu Luiyue was stunned. She had only seen seals that were used to confine power, but she had never seen one that emitted power. Moreover, this power was pure and rich. It was almost rare in the world. Even if she had the Tianjing Yuan Meridian in her previous life, she might not be able to refine such pure and warm power. But now, this power was gradually seeping into her body. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a while before she finally regained her senses. The seal on the pyramid was actually helping her to nourish her body and improve her cultivation. After thinking this through, even Chu Luiyue was filled with shock. What was going on? Didn't the first master forcibly leave this seal on the pyramid because he didn't want her to touch it? But now, what about the power that was overflowing from it? Suddenly, a figure flashed across her mind. It was the back of a man in a black brocade robe. Although it was blurry, it was still tall, slender, and straight. Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly skipped a beat. She had seen this man's back before. It was clearly the man who had stood in the octagonal pavilion on the cliff in the Imperial Mausoleum in the illusion. But this time he was not standing there. Instead, it seemed like he was standing beside a lake. The scene flashed so quickly that Chu Luiyue did not have time to see it clearly before it disappeared. Chu Luiyue seriously tried to recall it, but she was disappointed to find that she could not remember anything. However, that sense of familiarity was becoming stronger and stronger. Chu Luiyue opened his eyes, his heart beating wildly. She finally couldn't hold it in any longer. She stood up, walked to the window and pushed it open in frustration. The night breeze blew, instantly waking her up. Now, she was more and more suspicious that it was not an illusion at all. Otherwise, she definitely wouldn't have such a subtle feeling. Could it be that the man in the black robe was the owner of the precious treasure pavilion? Chu Luiyue frowned. If that was the case then, why didn't she have any impression of this person? She tucked her hair behind her ears, and a trace of seriousness appeared between her brows. Something doesn't seem right. Whoosh! Suddenly, a strange voice came from afar. Chu Luiyue immediately looked up. In the darkness of the night, a black figure appeared in the courtyard. The moonlight elongated that person's shadow, but Chu Luiyue couldn't see that person's appearance under the heavy shadows. Then a terrifying aura enveloped the entire courtyard. Chu Luiyue was instantly on guard. Her muscles tensed up. This person was extremely dangerous. The surrounding space seemed to be frozen, and all sound was annihilated. The silence was chilling. Suddenly, that person stretched out his hand and beckoned with his index finger. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. It was a severely burned hand. Even though only half of the palm was exposed, Chu Luiyue could clearly see the shocking scars on it under the moonlight. In the next moment, that person's figure instantly rose into the air and flew into the distance. Did he want her to follow? Chu Luiyue's hand slowly clenched into a fist. She wasn't sure if this was some kind of invitation or provocation. But no matter what, that person clearly knew her identity. And he came with a purpose. Just as that person's figure was about to disappear, Chu Luiyue saw that person suddenly turn around. This time, that person stretched out his hand again and made a gesture. Chu Luiyue's eyes suddenly widened. Because that gesture was a secret code that only the 13U guards knew. Palace, Blessing Palace. This was Rong Jin's residence in the palace. After he turned 20, he moved to Crown Prince Mansion outside the palace and rarely came back here. Because of this, Blessing Palace was more deserted than other places, and not many people came here. But at this point, almost nobody knew that the deposed Crown Prince Rong Jin was locked up here. Situ Xingchen was also locked up here with him. It was already night time and Blessing Palace was pitch black. It looked as deserted as usual. However, there were a few hidden auras in the dark, indicating that this place wasn't as peaceful as it looked on the surface. A figure quietly entered the hall. He entered the side hall, walked to the front of the bookshelf, and raised his hand to turn an inkstone on the shelf. The sound of gears moving could be heard. Under the bookshelf, the smooth and heavy jade board slowly moved aside. A narrow entrance appeared in front of them. With the moonlight, they could vaguely see that there was a staircase inside. That person walked down without hesitation. After his figure disappeared, the jade board closed again. The entire room was silent as if nothing had happened. Chu Luiyue's heart was in turmoil. The 13U guards were her personal guards and she personally created them back then. Every single one of the 13 guards was personally selected and trained by her. Unlike Mu Qinghe who controlled the military, the 13U guards had no connections with any forces in the imperial court. They were more like her secret knife. Wherever she pointed, they would cut through all the thorns for her. The most important thing was that she was their only direct master. At any time, at any place, under any circumstances, they would only listen to her orders. Even her father had no right to interfere. When she was in a desperate situation back then, the 13U guards weren't by her side. All the signals she sent for help were also ignored. Until her death, she didn't see any of them again. After meeting Mu Qinghe, she had a guess in her heart. Did the 13U guards betray her back then? She didn't dare to think about it. Every time she thought of this, she would automatically skip it as if she was actively avoiding something. Therefore, only God knew how shocked she was when she saw that familiar hand gesture. Chu Luiyue's entire body seemed to be frozen. All the blood in her body stopped flowing, and only her heart was beating wildly. Thump, 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 thump. Countless guesses flashed through her mind at lightning speed. However, just as she opened her mouth and was about to ask the person, that person suddenly turned and left. Chu Luiyue gritted her teeth and jumped out of the window. She followed that person. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 423. Creak. The sound of the door opening was heard in the dark and cramped space. Situ Xingchen, who was trapped in the metal cage, suddenly looked up. Her exquisite hair bun was already untied, and a few strands of hair hung down messily. She looked very down and out. The dirty marks on her face and body made her look even more disheveled. I've lived for so many years, but I've never been in such a situation. The footsteps gradually got closer. A man walked in and stood 3 steps away from the metal cage. In the entire space, only the 2 candles on the mottled walls were shining weakly. Situ Xingqian couldn't see the person's face clearly, but she immediately recognized him when she saw his figure. It's Emperor Jiawen. She almost immediately stood up, rushed over, grabbed the metal bars and harshly shook them. Let me out. Let me out. My father is already here, right? Emperor Jiawen took a step back and reached out to fan his nose. Situ Xingqian was instantly embarrassed and her face was burning. She involuntarily let go of her hands and wanted to crawl into the ground. After being locked in here, she had to settle all her daily needs in this small space, and she couldn't even leave the cage. One could imagine what kind of person she was now. Situ Xingqian didn't know how long she had been locked in here because every day felt like a year. Every second she spent here made her feel like she was one step closer to breaking down. Ever since she was born, she was country Xing Luo's honorable eldest princess. When had she ever experienced such torture? She had already cursed Emperor Jiawen countless times in her heart. If she had the chance, she would definitely cut him into pieces. But at this point, she was still on the other party's chopping board, so she naturally didn't dare to be too presumptuous. Emperor Jiawen sneered. He's here, but he should be on his way back now, right? Situ Xingqian's expression instantly froze. It was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over her head, extinguishing all her hopes and desires. Impossible. My father definitely won't leave me alone. You're lying to me. Situ Xingqian screamed in disbelief. Father has always doted on me the most. How can he leave just like that? Don't worry. He's only going back to prepare for your wedding with Rongjin. You're his most beloved daughter, so of course he wouldn't abandon you. All right, the date is set to be half a month later, said Emperor Jiawen slowly. After the emperor's funeral, we will hold your wedding. Originally, it was set to be a month later, but your imperial father seemed to be in a hurry, so he brought it forward by half a month. Situ Xingqian was completely stunned. What? My wedding with Rongjin? She had already told her father that Rongjin was a fake heaven's chosen son. On the one hand, father came to cancel her marriage agreement with Rongjin, and on the other hand he wanted to take her away from here. But now what was going on? Time was tight, so it was inevitable that some things were overlooked. But thankfully, Rongjin was no longer the crown prince, so many complicated and long formalities could be skipped. Emperor Jiawen sounded relaxed as if he were really happy for them. Situ Xingqian was so angry that her entire body trembled. He did it on purpose. Emperor Jiawen clearly did it on purpose. He wanted to use this opportunity to thoroughly humiliate them. At this stage, Situ Xingqian finally tore off her last layer of disguise. Her sharp voice reverberated in the dark space, and it sounded more like a female ghost's shrill scream. She stared at Emperor Jiawen with all her might, wanting to find some clues from his blurry face. But nothing. Emperor Jiawen didn't look like he was lying. Situ Xingqian's heart finally sank. She knew that Emperor Jiawen was forcing her. The moonlight was bright, and the night breeze was gentle. The imperial city at night seemed to have fallen into a deep slumber as it was silent. Chu Liyue followed that mysterious person all the way. Very quickly, she discovered that the person was heading in the direction of the palace. Her heart skipped a beat and she instantly hesitated. It wasn't that she hadn't been to the palace before, so she clearly knew that the entire palace was actually a gigantic Shen formation. Outside the imperial palace, there was an invisible barrier. With her current strength, it would be too difficult for her to sneak in without anyone noticing. But the person in front didn't seem to care about all this as he continued to move forward quickly. Chu Liyue took a deep breath in and still followed him. No matter what, I must get to the bottom of this matter today. After around 15 minutes, the two of them finally arrived outside the palace's walls. This place was rather secluded, and other than the patrolling imperial guards, there weren't many people guarding it. But Chu Liyue could clearly feel the barrier's suppression when she stood below the wall. She looked up at that mysterious person. That person stretched out his hand, and a ray of starlight flashed across his fingertips. A neat cut instantly appeared on the barrier. Also, it didn't cause any commotion. Chu Liyue's eyelids harshly twitched. This move. I've seen it before. It had helped me a lot before, but I didn't expect that today. Shwa. The barrier opened and that person had already jumped over the wall. He had entered the palace. Chu Luiyue could only see the corner of a black shirt flashing across the wall. She took a few steps back and quickly rushed forward. She stepped on the wall. Then her body was parallel to the ground and she directly rushed up the wall. She easily flipped her body, bent her legs slightly and landed on the ground. She looked up and saw that the person had continued to move forward. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. This person wasn't worried that she wouldn't be able to keep up. But she didn't have time to think too much and quickly chased after him. The two of them were like night cats, completely hidden in the thick darkness of the night. But soon, Chu Luiyue was shocked to find that this person seemed to be very familiar with the layout of the palace. Under that person's lead, they easily avoided all the patrolling and guarding palace guards. They drove straight in. Chu Luiyue was even more puzzled. Why was this person so familiar with the palace, as if he had been here countless times? Especially towards the end, they went further and further away, but that person's speed was consistent from beginning to end. Every step he took was without any hesitation. After about the time it took to drink a cup of tea, that person finally stopped. Chu Luiyue stood still, hiding in the shadows, and looked forward. When she saw the words "Blessing Palace" on the signboard, her brows furrowed slightly. Why did he come to this place? It didn't seem like... Suddenly, Chu Luiyue's gaze focused. No. There were a few obscure auras around the Blessing Palace. There was someone inside. Just as she was thinking about who would be here at this time of the night, that mysterious person suddenly walked forward. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 424. Chu Luiyue originally thought that the person was going to directly go over, but he saw something fall from the person's hands when he walked over the next moment. Under the illumination of the moonlight, that thing reflected a faint light. A faint fragrance wafted out. Chu Luiyue was stunned. This is phosphor powder. Just a little bit of it can ignite a sea of fire. This person. Is he planning to burn Blessing Palace down? But this is only the periphery of Blessing Palace. Even if he sprinkles the phosphor powder here, it won't immediately burn inside. What is he doing this for? Suddenly, Blessing Palace's side door opened. Chu Luiyue immediately looked up. A figure walked out from it. Chu Luiyue focused his gaze. It's indeed Emperor Jiawen. After thinking about it, he's the only person who can mobilize such a large force in the palace. As the distance was quite far, and the person's face was mostly hidden in the darkness, Chu Luiyue couldn't clearly see his current expression. Emperor Jiawen raised his hand and pointed. He then turned around to take a look before leaving. Along with his figure, two of the few obscure auras disappeared as well. It was obvious that the remaining people were still in charge of guarding this place. Chu Luiyue squinted his eyes. There aren't many people who can make Emperor Jiawen spend so much effort and carefully trap them in the palace. He thought of Situ Yan's ugly expression when he saw him previously. The person who's locked here should be Situ Xingqian. Emperor Jiawen clearly wants to get something out of her, but judging from his previous appearance, there shouldn't be any progress. Chu Luiyue looked at the mysterious person in front of him. He must know that Situ Xingqian is trapped here, so he purposely lured her here. But why is he doing this? Without waiting for Chu Luiyue to ask, that person silently walked in another direction. His footsteps seemed slow, but they were actually very fast. He also perfectly hid his tracks. If Chu Luiyue hadn't been staring at him, he probably wouldn't have been able to recognize his movements. For some reason, she seemed to be able to guess that person's thoughts, so when he gradually approached the Blessing Palace, she obediently stayed where she was. With her current realm, she would only become a target if she went out. Moreover, it would definitely attract the attention of those experts in the dark. Therefore, she might as well not do anything and just wait and see what would happen. Soon, that person's figure disappeared behind a pillar at the very edge of the Blessing and Peace Palace. Chu Luiyue held his breath. Suddenly, a powerful pressure came down from the sky at high speed. She immediately looked up. He saw a gray-robed man walking in the air. He was wearing a curtained hat that covered his face, so his appearance could not be seen. However, judging from his slightly hunched shoulders, he seemed to be quite old. The moment he appeared, three figures instantly appeared around the Blessing Palace. The gray-robed old man was surrounded in the middle. Who are you? How dare you barge into Yao Chen's palace? Chu Luiyue squinted her eyes. The three of them were clearly sent by Emperor Jiawen to guard this place. Also, the three of them were all Stage 5 warriors. There were only a handful of Stage 5 warriors in the entire country Yao Chen, yet Emperor Jiawen actually left three of them here. This showed how strict he was with Situ Xingqian. This lineup was enough to stop most people from barging in. However, that gray-robed old man was an entire stage higher than them. The higher the stage, the greater the difference between the two parties. Even if the three of them worked together, they might not be this old man's match. This old man came here today only to take someone away. As long as you know what's good for you, I won't make things difficult for you," said the gray-robed old man calmly. His voice was low and hoarse and his tone was calm. However, it had a high and mighty aura as if it was an order. He's clearly the one who came to snatch Situ Xingqian, yet he said that he wouldn't make things difficult for the other party. How arrogant, Chu Luiyue thought quickly. This person clearly came for Situ Xingqian, but as for his identity, it's hard to guess. How dare you? Where do you think this is? Do you think you can come and go as you please? The three of them were clearly enraged by the old man's words. They looked at each other and rushed forward together. I'll teach you a lesson today. Faced with the three people's attacks, the gray-robed old man didn't seem to care at all. He laughed softly and didn't hide his disdain at all. With just the three of you? Seeing that the three of them were getting closer and closer to him, he didn't move at all. Kill? The three forces instantly flew out at the same time. Seeing that he was about to be hit, the old man finally raised his hand. His palm was exceptionally wide, and it was like a fan as it silently landed. A gigantic silver palm print appeared above him. Mountain River Seal, hollered the old man. The silver palm print instantly pressed down. In the next moment, the three origin powers actually collapsed and completely dissipated. The violent force spread in all directions. However, at this moment the old man's palm curled up slightly, and all of the crazy energy turbulence was silently contained. Everything happened silently, but it immediately caused the three people's expressions to change. A stage 6 warrior was actually so powerful? Go! The gray-robed old man gently waved his palm. A terrifying force crazily gushed out from his palm. The gigantic palm print gradually dissipated, and finally, the star turned into a silver ring that kept expanding. Quickly retreat. The three of them felt that something was wrong and immediately wanted to escape. But it was too late. The powerful pressure contained within the silver ring almost made them unable to breathe. All of them were frozen on the spot. No matter how hard they struggled, they were unable to take even half a step away. They could only allow the silver ring to crush their bodies. One of them couldn't take it and spat out a mouthful of blood. The other two weren't any better. Their faces were pale and they couldn't say a word. Overestimating yourself. The gray-robed old man sneered and moved his palm slightly. You don't, Before the person who struggled to open his mouth could finish his words, a strange light flashed across the silver ring and passed through his chest. Following a muffled sound, his body flew out and fell heavily on the ground. Chu Luiyue became even more cautious and controlled her aura. At the same time, many guesses flashed through her mind. To dare to come here with such fanfare, it was enough to show how arrogant this person was. 1 against 3 and he was actually so relaxed. The gray-robed old man obviously didn't put those people in his eyes. After dealing with them, he went straight for the entrance of the Blessing Palace. However, just as he was about to approach, a gigantic Xian formation suddenly appeared above the Blessing Palace and completely enveloped it. The gray-robed old man finally stopped. Because this Xian formation was actually quite troublesome. But Chu Luiyue, who was hiding in the dark, suddenly had her eyes lit up. She could use that Xian formation to enter the Blessing Palace. Digression, Kawenka is about to faint. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 425. The gigantic Xian formation shone brightly, and the entire Blessing Palace was shrouded in the dazzling light. Under such circumstances, I'll definitely be discovered if I go over directly. But if I merge into the Xian formation, I can conceal myself. Chu Luiyue stared at the Xian formation carefully as her fingers slid in mid-air, outlining the rough outline. She had never seen this Xian formation before, and this Xian formation's level wasn't low. Thus, she couldn't replicate its original appearance in such a short time. However, she could easily take it apart. A sharp whistle suddenly came from mid-air. Bang! A firework suddenly bloomed in the dark night sky. This is a warning signal. This commotion will definitely attract everyone's attention in the palace. The elder in gray was thinking about how to break the Xian formation when he heard this sound. He immediately turned around. When he realized that the three of them had sent out a request for help, he couldn't help but snort. It seems like you're really not afraid of blowing this matter up. The man who was previously thrown onto the ground crawled up with difficulty and spat out a mouthful of blood. He was also holding a tube in his hand. He was clearly the one who lit the firework just now. When the other two saw this, they looked at each other and saw deep worry in each other's eyes. They rushed to that person's side and anxiously said, "Did you forget about Princess Jingham? Have you forgotten what His Majesty said before? Situ Xingqian is locked up in the Blessing Palace. His Majesty placed a lot of importance on this matter and even invited us to guard her together. Even the Empress, who was under house arrest back then, didn't receive such treatment. This shows how much His Majesty cares about this matter. Before this, His Majesty had repeatedly instructed us not to let outsiders know that Situ Xingqian was hiding here. But once this news is released, everyone will know about it. In less than 15 minutes, I believe that all the experts in and out of the palace will immediately gather here." The man who spat out blood slowly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stared at the elder in gray. His Majesty also said that the most important thing is to keep an eye on her. If she's taken away, then we won't be able to bear the consequences. The other two looked at each other and hesitated for a moment. In the end they did not say anything. They once again spread out and surrounded the gray-robed old man. Since it had come to this, they could only do their best. Seeing the three of them in such a formation, the gray-robed old man was stunned for a moment before he suddenly laughed out loud. "Looks like you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Don't blame this old man for being impolite. Stop him." The three of them also made up their minds and charged forward together. The four of them instantly engaged in a fierce battle. Now is the time. Chu Liwei retracted his aura and quickly headed for the Blessing and Harmony Palace. At the same time, several incomplete Shen formations appeared around her. Compared to the gigantic Shen formation above, this small Shen formation did not have any sense of existence. However, the patterns and light were able to envelop Chu Liue's body. Chu Liue kept moving forward, completely hiding his figure in the countless streams of light. The most important thing was that even though the few Shen formations that she copied weren't complete, they were more or less compatible with the Shen formation above. It was precisely because of this subtle compatibility that the Shen formation directly ignored Chu Liue's intrusion. Chu Liue's path was smooth and unobstructed. She successfully arrived at the side door. Previously, Emperor Jiawen had exited from this inconspicuous spot. Thinking of this, Chu Liue silently sneaked in. Her actions were very fast and she disappeared behind the door in the blink of an eye. She did not even attract the attention of the gray-robed old man and the other three people. After entering the palace, Chu Liue immediately started searching for Situ Xingqian's whereabouts. Under the light of the Shen formation outside, everything in the palace was much clearer. However, Chu Liue looked around and did not see anyone. The palace was empty, and there was even a thin layer of dust on the table. This place had clearly been empty for a period of time. Chu Liue surveyed her surroundings. Suddenly, her gaze focused and she looked at the bookshelf on the wall. At first glance, there was nothing wrong with the bookshelf, but the books on it seemed to be placed messily. Even if Rong Jin didn't stay here long ago, everything here should at least be placed neatly. Chu Liue walked over and touched the bookshelf to look for clues. When she saw the inkstone, she knitted her brows. The inkstone's material was very normal, and the carving was average. It didn't look like something that would appear in the palace. She reached out and touched it before she tried to turn it. The ground under her feet suddenly moved. A staircase that extended downwards appeared in front of her. Chu Liue paused for a moment before jumping in. She walked down step by step. The surroundings were dark and damp, and there was only a faint light when she was very far away. However, other than her, there was no one else around. She silently walked forward. After walking for some time, an exit finally appeared in front of her. An extremely sealed space appeared in front of Chu Liue. When Situ Xingqian heard the footsteps again, she thought that Emperor Jiawen had returned. Hence she didn't even look up. She didn't raise her head and said, "I don't know. No matter how much you ask me, I don't know. What don't you know?" The clear voice of a woman suddenly sounded. Situ Xingqian's heart skipped a beat and she finally looked over. Even though that face was blurry, that figure and that voice couldn't be mistaken. Chu Liue. She actually came here? Situ Xingqian's mind was in a mess as she clenched her fists tightly, and deep hatred flashed across her eyes. Chu Liue, what are you doing here? Chu Liue walked over, and her eyes were like water as they lightly swept across Situ Xingqian. Her gaze was very calm, but Situ Xingqian felt as if she had been stripped naked. It was extremely embarrassing. You killed the Empress, right? Asked Chu Liue suddenly. Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth. What nonsense are you spouting? You also let Rong Jin out of Crown Prince Mansion, right? Asked Chu Luiyue again. No. I didn't. What? Did Emperor Jiawen send you to interrogate me? Situ Xingqian's voice was filled with intense anger. If looks could kill, Situ Xingqian's venomous gaze would have cut Chu Luiyue into pieces. Chu Luiyue's expression didn't change, as if he didn't care about her answer. What did you get from the Empress? Hand it over. As Chu Luiyue spoke, he stretched out his hand. Situ Xingqian suddenly widened her eyes. How does Chu Luiyue know about this? Chu Luiyue's eyes sparkled. If you're more honest, I can tell you who the real Heaven's chosen son is. Digression, I'm so sleepy that I can't open my eyes. I can't take it anymore as I sit in front of the computer. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 426. The Real Heaven's Chosen Son? Hearing this, Situ Xingqian's heart skipped a beat. How did you know? Shouldn't only the Empress and Rong Jin know about this? Could it be that Rong Jin told Chu Luiyue about it before? No, why would Rong Jin tell others about such an important thing so easily? Even if he likes Chu Luiyue a little, he wouldn't go to this extent. Besides, Chu Luiyue clearly knows that Rong Jin isn't the real Heaven's chosen son. Other than the few of us who were in the Imperial Mausoleum that day, who else would know about this? Situ Xingqian looked at Chu Luiyue warily. Suddenly, an idea popped up in her mind and she couldn't help but blurt out. She suddenly blurted out, "You were also in the Imperial Mausoleum that day?" As she was shocked, her hoarse voice became sharp. Chu Luiyue shrugged and nonchalantly said, "There's no such thing as a wall. I'll tell you one thing. I'm only going to ask you one last time. Will you give it to me or not?" Situ Xingqian grabbed the railing and her eyes sparkled. Since you already know about this, I don't have to hide it anymore. I got the key to Golden Inheritance Peak's barrier from the Empress. Even though the Empress secretly copied it, it can still open the barrier. Besides, I've already given that thing to Rong Jin. If not, how do you think he could enter Golden Inheritance Peak so smoothly? Chu Luiyue raised his brows. When she saw Rong Jin and the rest enter the Imperial Mausoleum with Emperor Jiawen, she had already guessed this point. But this wasn't the main point. You know that's not what I want. Chu Luiyue lightly said. Situ Xingqian forcefully pretended to be calm and said without changing her expression, "The Empress only gave me this." Oh. Chu Luiyue smiled in a seemingly smiling manner. If it's really that simple, why would Emperor Jiawen use such a huge force to lock Situ Xingqian up? He even specially came here to secretly interrogate her on a dark and windy night. Initially she didn't think of this, but after seeing Emperor Jiawen and the terrifying defense around her, she guessed that Situ Xingqian had something that Emperor Jiawen wanted. Judging from Emperor Jiawen's attitude toward Heptagon Alley, he should know the real secret behind it. Hence, he didn't want to get anything out of Situ Xingqian but wanted to get something. She was just casually bluffing, but judging from the other party's reaction, she was basically certain. Situ Xingqian felt guilty under Chu Luiyue's stare. How could this be? From the beginning to the end, she was extremely secretive and was not discovered by anyone. If I wasn't caught by Emperor Jiawen in the Imperial Mausoleum, I wouldn't be trapped here. She turned around as if she didn't want to continue the conversation with Chu Luiyue. It seems that there's nothing more to say between us. The moment she turned around, she quickly looked at the jade bracelet on her wrist. The two dots of light had already overlapped. This was something that Elder Zhong Yi had specially given to her when she left Mingyue Tianshan. This jade bracelet contained one Dao Sect's Elder Zhong's strength. Relying on this, he could quickly find her no matter where she was. When she was locked here, she immediately asked Elder Zhong Yi for help. Now that the two dots of light overlapped, it meant that Elder Zhong Yi was nearby. However, he didn't come even after a long time. Instead, Chu Luiyue came. Pong, pong, pong. A series of explosions suddenly came from outside. Even the entire space started to shake. Situ Xingqian suddenly looked up. Elder Zhong Yi is fighting with someone outside. She was elated. Elder Zhong Yi is very strong, so it shouldn't be a problem for him to deal with these people from country Yaochen. As long as he can bring me away from here, Situ Xingqian. Chu Luiyue suddenly spoke. Situ Xingqian instinctively turned around. What? Something suddenly flew towards her face. The alarm in her heart went off, and she immediately wanted to retreat. However, she was currently trapped in this metal cage, and her position was extremely small. She had just taken a step back when she touched the railing. She waved her sleeves and harshly swept that thing away. Chu Luiyue lightly raised his brows. Situ Xingqian's force was indeed suppressed, and she couldn't even use a bit of force at this point. Emperor Jiawen really made all the necessary preparations to deal with me. However, this time I'm going to benefit from it. Chu Luiyue, don't think that I can't do anything to you just because I'm trapped here. Situ Xingqian quickly glanced at the ground and realized that it was actually a jade bottle. After it landed on the ground, it directly broke and a green liquid slowly flowed out. Smelling that weird smell, she coldly laughed. You want to poison me with just this small bottle of Qingshui Yang? Qingshui Yang's poison was very strong, but she didn't even touch it previously, so it was completely useless. Chu Liyue's lips curved up into a smile. You're mistaken. I haven't done anything yet. Situ Xingqian was instantly dazed. A silver light suddenly flew out from Chu Liyue's fingertips. It directly splashed into the small puddle of Qingshui Yang. Bang! A light sound was heard and a ball of purplish-green smoke rose up. Situ Xingqian's face changed drastically. But the next moment, the purplish-green smoke rapidly rushed toward her. She hurriedly covered her mouth and nose. Don't you know that Qingshui Yang's poison will instantly increase by a few times when it comes into contact with dabin powder? Besides, the most convenient thing is that as long as this thing touches your skin, even if it's just a little bit, it will instantly seep into your organs. A terrifying burning sensation came from her hand. Situ Xingqian lowered her head to take a look and saw that her originally smooth and white skin was actually rapidly drying up. It also had a mottled purplish-green color. Looked very scary. What's going on? What did you do to me? Situ Xingqian screamed in shock. Chu Liyue raised his brows slightly, glanced at her hand, smiled and nonchalantly said, Oh, I see. It seems like you really don't know that the side effect of this poison is that you'll rapidly age, from the outside to the inside. Now it's your hand. Later it should be your face. As he spoke, Chu Liyue shook his head in pity. This is mentioned in the footnote on page 582 of the Celestial Physician's Handbook. As a celestial physician, you actually didn't even read this. Situ Xingqian was furious. The Celestial Physician's Handbook was a very basic medical book, and it was also a beginner's book for all celestial physician. However, there were too many things to remember in it. Who would pay attention to a small footnote? Now the thing that scared her the most was her face. Chu Liyue, you're really sinister and vicious. Situ Xingqian's hands trembled. If Rong Xiu knows that you're such a vicious woman, he'll definitely regret marrying you. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 427. Chu Liyue chuckled lightly. You're finally admitting it? From the start, Situ Xingqian had been hostile toward her. No matter if it was during the Qingjiao competition or when Situ Xingqian framed her for imprisoning Rong Zhen, Situ Xingqian could tell that Situ Xingqian didn't just dislike Situ Xingqian, but she was also jealous and resentful of her. Situ Xingqian's chest seemed to be blocked by something, and she felt so stifled that she was about to explode. She finally couldn't hold it in and harshly scolded her. So what if he is? I've liked him for so many years, but he doesn't even remember who I am. What about you? You're just an abandoned good-for-nothing from a declining family. How can you compare to me? In terms of looks, I'm not inferior to Chu Liyue. In terms of background, I'm many times better than Chu Liyue. In terms of my relationship with Rong Xiu, I've been with him at Mingyue Tianshan for so many years. How can Chu Liyue compare to him? He's always been high and mighty and keeps all women at a respectful distance. But he actually knelt down in front of so many people for you. All for the sake of a marriage agreement with you. I'm clearly the one who understands him the most. Only I'm worthy of him in this world. Situ Xingqian's heart ached every time she thought of this. She didn't understand what was so good about Chu Liyue that Rong Xiu was willing to treat her like this. It's as if he gave all his gentleness and love to only one person. Previously, when Rong Xiu sent people to burn the clothes with the cloud embroidery, she still had a sliver of hope in her heart. But later on, everything happened one after another and they all slapped her in the face. Every time, it made her understand that Rong Xiu cared about this person more than she imagined. Situ Xingqian's hatred for Chu Liyue also deepened. Chu Liyue looked at her face, which was contorted from anger and hatred, and lightly smiled. How do you know that he doesn't know? Situ Xingqian's expression suddenly froze. Since you claim to understand him, then, do you know why he did this? Chu Liyue said slowly. Every word was like a sharp knife that harshly stabbed Situ Xingqian's heart. The blood drained from her face in an instant, leaving behind a face full of fear and unwillingness. That's right. How could someone like Rong Xiu not know what kind of person Chu Liyue was? But he still chose her. There was only one explanation. He was deeply in love with Chu Luiyue. She was the only one he wanted. From a very long time ago, she knew that people like Rong Xiu would only fall in love with one person if they didn't fall in love. Once they did, they would only love one person for the rest of their lives, and they would give everything they had. What exactly did you do? Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth, and her knuckles turned green from gripping the railing too tightly. At this moment, she inadvertently looked down and saw that her wrist had also turned purple. She was taken aback. If I really turn into an old lady with bruises all over my body, then in the future, there will be no future. Once she thought of that scene, she felt goosebumps all over her body. I definitely won't allow myself to become like that. As long as you bring me out, I guarantee that I'll hand the item over to you, said Situ Xingqian hatefully. But you have to guarantee that you'll also cure the poison in my body. If not, even if I go to hell, I'll definitely turn into a malicious spirit and come back to take revenge on you. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up slightly and he thought to himself, interesting. Seriously speaking, I'm the one who went to hell and came back to take revenge. However, I didn't turn into a malicious spirit but became Chu Luiyue. Who's afraid of who? It seems like the person outside is here to save you. Chu Luiyue suddenly said, you want to go out with me and take the chance to escape? Situ Xingqian's heart skipped a beat. I don't know what you're talking about. Chu Luiyue didn't need her answer either. I'm only here to take that item, not to save you. If you don't want to hand it over, then so be it. I've been here long enough. It's time for me to leave. Then Chu Luiyue actually turned around and left. Situ Xingqian finally panicked. Stop right there. Detoxify the poison first. I can even feel that the poison has already spread to my arm. It wouldn't be long before her face would be completely ruined. Chu Luiyue waved her hand. Seeing that her figure was about to disappear in front of her, Situ Xingqian finally clenched her teeth and said, I'll give it to you. Chu Luiyue stood still, then turned around and smiled at her. Wouldn't it have been better if you did this earlier? Situ Xingqian's face was filled with vigilance. Cure the poison first. Chu Luiyue gently flicked her finger. A palm-sized wooden cover fell. The purplish-green smoke seemed to be attracted by a certain force as it changed its direction and surged toward the wooden cover. When the last wisp of smoke disappeared into the wooden cover, Situ Xingqian finally heaved a sigh of relief. Take the item out, said Chu Luiyue. Situ Xingqian widened her eyes and raised her hands. The poison in my body hasn't been cured yet. When you give it to me, I'll naturally cure it for you. Chu Luiyue chuckled. Situ Xingqian choked and cursed in her heart. This Chu Luiyue is really cunning. He won't take any losses. She hesitated for a while, but she knew that Chu Luiyue could do anything. Hence, she didn't dare to be too presumptuous and could only touch her jade bracelet. Then, a wooden box appeared in front of her. Chu Luiyue's gaze lightly swept across the jade bracelet. It turns out that it's a cosmic bracelet. This item's value is much higher than a cosmic bag's. This is because it's easy to recognize a cosmic bag, but a cosmic bracelet looks no different from a normal bracelet. This should be one of the reasons why Situ Xingqian could keep this item intact and not let Emperor Jiawen take it away. This is the box that the Empress left behind when she was alive. Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in and finally pushed the wooden box forward. As long as you can open this metal cage, the item in this wooden box will be yours. Then she took another step back as if she really wanted to hand the item over. However, she sneered in her heart. This metal cage has an extremely strong restriction. If Chu Luiyue wants to take this item, he must solve this problem. If I can't solve it, this item will still be mine. If I can solve it, this metal cage will definitely be opened. I can then take the chance to escape. Anyway, Elder Zhongyi is outside, so I can definitely succeed. Chu Luiyue squinted his eyes as if he had a headache. Situ Xingqian quietly stood there, but she was secretly adjusting her breathing, waiting to deliver a fatal blow at any moment. Suddenly, Chu Luiyue lightly said, Chu Luiyue, dumpling, bring the item over. A red shadow darted out. It directly pounced toward the wooden box. Situ Xingqian knitted her brows and finally recognized it. It was Chu Luiyue's blood ferret. The next moment she heard a kacha sound, and a hole suddenly appeared on the metal cage. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 428. Situ Xingqian immediately dashed toward the opening. At the same time, she stretched out her hand to snatch the wooden box back. At this moment, Dumpling's figure darted out and directly bumped into the wooden box. The wooden box instantly moved to the side. Situ Xingqian's hand narrowly missed it. Indignance flashed across her eyes, but she didn't hesitate in her actions as she continued forward, planning to leave through the opening. The item in the wooden box is very important, but it can't be compared to my life. As long as I can escape from here, everything will be fine. After I leave, I still have a chance to snatch the wooden box back. However, just as she poked her head out of the hole, a cold wind suddenly attacked her. Bang! Chu Luiyue harshly kicked Situ Xingqian's face. Situ Xingqian's figure instantly flew backward and heavily bumped into the metal cage behind her. Taking advantage of this opportunity, dumpling directly through the wooden box out. Chu Luiyue easily caught it and opened it. Inside the wooden box was a roll of goatskin. An indescribably powerful aura spread out from the top of the mountain. Chu Luiyue was certain in his heart. This is it. Situ Xingqian closed the wooden box again and placed it in her cosmic bag. Her series of actions could be said to be smooth. Situ Xingqian finally recovered her senses at this point. Her mind was buzzing, and her face was in excruciating pain. There was a strong smell of blood in her mouth. She opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood, but she realized that there was actually half a tooth in it. Chu Luiyue used all his strength in that kick, so she didn't even have time to avoid it and bumped right into it. Just like that, half of her front tooth was forcefully broken. Situ Xingqian's hands trembled as she touched her face. Her face was filled with sticky and sweet-smelling blood stains. It also quickly became red and swollen. She didn't need to look in the mirror to know how disheveled and ugly she looked. Situ Xingqian's lungs were about to explode from anger. Not only did Chu Luiyue snatch the wooden box, but he even disfigured me. This completely broke the last string in her heart. I'll kill you. Situ Xingqian rushed toward Chu Luiyue hysterically. A silver light flashed and a dagger appeared in Chu Luiyue's hand. Then she gently raised her wrist. A thin blade flew out from the dagger. It went straight for Situ Xingqian's face. Sensing the piercing murderous intent, Situ Xingqian's heart sank, and she immediately dodged. However, with her origin power sealed and the inhumane torture she had endured these past few days, she was completely exhausted. As a result, her pace was slower than usual. However, Chu Luiyue's flying dagger was very fast. The sound of a sharp weapon piercing through flesh could be heard. The flying dagger directly pierced through Situ Xingqian's left shoulder. A bloody hole appeared and blood splattered everywhere. As long as he enters this palace, he'll immediately discover my presence. Chu Luiyue surveyed her surroundings and realized that no matter which direction she escaped in, she would attract attention. Just as she was in a dilemma, a greenish-white fire suddenly started burning from Blessing Palace's side door. This was the scene that Emperor Jiawen saw when he rushed over. The gigantic silver Xian formation had already been torn apart, and a gray-robed elder had already rushed to Blessing Palace's door. The greenish-white fire rose up and instantly surrounded the entire Blessing Palace. His temples suddenly throbbed and all the blood in his body seemed to have solidified. Stop him. Stop him. Situ Xingqian is still inside. This person clearly wants to use the fire as a smokescreen to bring Situ Xingqian out. This definitely won't do. Actually, Emperor Jiawen didn't know that the gray-robed elder was also trapped in the fire. The fire started very suddenly and it was very fierce. Even though he was a stage 6 warrior, it was a little troublesome to deal with it. At the same time, Chu Luiyue, who was in the palace, saw the jumping fire and quickly rushed out of the window at the side without hesitation. When she jumped into the fire, her body was instantly wrapped in a layer of red fire. A figure suddenly appeared in front of her. It blocked her path. It's that mysterious person. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 429. Chu Luiyue immediately became alert. Is he going to attack me at this time? The wide hooded robe completely covered his body, and there was a black scarf on his face. From head to toe, he only revealed a pair of narrow black eyes. Chu Luiyue saw that pair of eyes. A strong sense of familiarity surged in her heart. Chu Luiyue's pupils constricted. A name was stuck in her throat as if it would jump out at any moment. He looked at her just like that. His eyes were like a pool of stagnant water without any ripples. However, Chu Luiyue instantly understood what he meant. She looked at him and slowly extended her hand. Her fingertips were still trembling slightly, but in the end she slowly and firmly made a gesture. Finally, the man's expression changed. The next moment, something suddenly flew out of his sleeve. Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed with silver light. The next moment, she felt as if her entire body had been dragged into a strange space. Her surroundings were dark, and a strong sense of oppression instantly surged. However, Chu Luiyue did not panic. That was because she knew that this was a yuan tool specially used for teleportation, the Heaven's Shadow Ring. This item was extremely precious. Even in the Tianling dynasty, it was a priceless treasure. This was because this Heaven's Shadow Ring only needed to inject a small amount of force into it to instantly teleport a person from one place to another. According to the distance of teleportation, it was divided into different grades. The higher the grade, the rarer it was and the safer it was. Chu Luiyue had this before, so she was quite familiar with it. After sensing it, she was sure that this should be considered a high-grade Heaven's Shadow Ring. Although the pressure of the spatial turbulence made people feel uncomfortable, there was nothing to worry about. Furthermore, she could feel that the person was standing not far from her. Even though she could not see anything, Chu Luiyue was not worried. Only that pair of long and narrow eyes kept flashing in her mind. She took a deep breath and suppressed all the questions and emotions in her heart. Not long after, the surrounding pressure suddenly disappeared. Chu Luiyue heaved a sigh of relief. He looked up and realized that he had returned home. The lamp in her room was still burning, emitting a faint light as if she had never left. Looking at the moon hanging in the night sky, Chu Luiyue did a rough calculation. The entire process took less than 2 hours. A gaze that seemed to materialize fell on her body. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. He took a deep breath and finally turned around. Their eyes met. Chu Luiyue's hands curled up slightly in his sleeves before he finally opened his mouth. You came here today to help me get something from Situ Xingqian? The man didn't speak, but the expression in his eyes changed. Chu Luiyue couldn't describe that feeling. Her heart felt like it was stuffed with thick and soft cotton, making it hard for her to breathe. However, vaguely, there seemed to be a small ray of light that pierced through the heavy fog in front of her, giving birth to some hope and anticipation in her heart. The two of them fell into silence. Chu Luiyue knew what she was waiting for. She even knew what the other party was waiting for. The cool moonlight shone down, elongating the two of their shadows. Chu Luiyue's hands tightened and loosened. She actually started to sweat in this cold night. After a while, she opened her mouth. Her throat was dry from nervousness. At the foot of the southern mountains. Every word and sentence was spoken clearly and clearly. That originally clear voice had become slightly hoarse at this moment, and it carried a faint bitterness and deep yearning. The man's gaze finally stirred up a huge storm. He finally opened his mouth and said his first sentence of the night. 13th you return. The next moment he lifted his clothes and knelt on one knee. His right hand was tightly pressed against his left chest. Empress concubine, receive a bow from Qi Han. It's him. It's really him. Even though she had already guessed his identity, when she heard it with her own ears and confirmed it herself, her heart still beat wildly. It was as if a flame had spread from the bottom of her heart, causing her entire body to burn. Everything around her suddenly became blurry, and only the figure of the person in front of her became clearer. Chu Luiyue had fantasized many times about whether someone would see through her appearance and see through her true identity. She thought of many people, but she didn't expect it to be the 13 Yu guards. Furthermore, it was at this time and in such a place. At the foot of the southern mountain, the 13 Yu guards had returned. This was the secret message between her and the 13 Yu guards. Other than them, no one else knew about it. Therefore, when Chu Luiyue said the first half of the sentence, it was equivalent to admitting her identity. She closed her eyes and turned to walk into the house. Come in and talk. Yes. Chu Luiyue walked into the room and Qi Han followed behind. After locking all the doors and windows and making sure that no one would notice anything unusual, Chu Luiyue sat down on the stool. She looked up and saw Qi Han standing at the side with his back straight, but his eyes were still looking at her from time to time. Obviously, Qi Han's doubts and shock about this were no less than hers. Chu Luiyue lifted her chin. Sit. Qi Han immediately said. Thank you, Your Highness. Qi Han can just stand. Chu Luiyue finally couldn't help but laugh. After not seeing each other for so long, things had changed, but Qi Han's personality hadn't changed at all. Sit. I'm no longer your master. You don't have to be restrained. Qi Han immediately knelt down again. Chapter 431. In the entire Tianling dynasty, she was the only one who had a 9-colored heavenly pheasant. The 13 Yu guards had followed her for many years, so they definitely wouldn't be mistaken. It was because of that feather that we believed the words in the letter. From then on, we always thought that you were actually still alive. Chu Luiyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If she was dead, she was indeed still here. If she was alive, she had actually just woken up a few months ago. So, after leaving Heaven's Canopy, we split up and secretly searched for your whereabouts. This time, it was also because this subordinate had inquired about some information that caused me to have some doubts about your identity. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. So, when you came just now, you deliberately made that gesture? Yes. You're so sure that it's me? Looking at Chi Han's confident look, Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh. Chi Han said honestly, I heard that Mu Qinghe was here, so I followed her on purpose. Chu Luiyue's smile froze. At first, I just wanted to know why she stayed here for so long. Later, I realized that something seemed to be wrong, so I started to secretly investigate you. Chi Han made it sound simple, but he had actually made ample preparations before coming here. Before he came, he already had a lot of confidence in his heart. Whether it was the astonishing talent of cultivating all three skills or the extremely similar expression in her eyes, he couldn't help but think more. But, most importantly, especially when I saw that you brought a gift for Hong Yao that day and Hong Yao's attitude toward you was so familiar. I was certain of my guess. Chu Luiyue was stunned. You know all this? Chi Han nodded honestly. Chu Luiyue, she actually didn't notice at all. Although her current strength couldn't be compared to before, her sensitivity and reaction had always been good. In the end, Chi Han had secretly investigated her for so long, but she actually didn't notice at all. After a long silence, Chu Luiyue finally said faintly, It's been a while since we last met. I haven't seen you for more than a year, but your hiding skills have improved. A suspicious shade of red flashed across Chi Han's unburned face. Your Highness is too kind. Seven Coldness still had a lot of shortcomings. Chu Luiyue, this brat really thought that it was praising him. However, looking at his scarred face, Chu Luiyue felt distressed. If everything was still fine, is there a way to remove your scar? Chi Han was stunned. He didn't expect her to suddenly change the topic. He touched his face and said, Actually, this is quite good. Many people can't recognize my identity, so it's much more convenient to do things. Chu Luiyue suddenly thought of something. Wait, could it be, because that flame was mine? At that time she was inconsolable, so she simply chose to self-destruct. She wanted to perish together with Jiang Yuqing and Shangguan Wan, so she released all the power in her body and burned it. How terrifying is the power of the fire produced by the Tianjing Yuan meridian? If not, it wouldn't have been able to give the two of them such a harsh blow. I just didn't expect it to implicate Chi Han. Normal herbs can't heal this kind of scar because the Tianjing Yuan meridian's power must have been left inside. If I can heal my Tianjing Yuan meridian, I might be able to easily solve this problem. Chu Luiyue rubbed her glabella. Okay, since you're done talking about this, tell me who told you about Situ Xingqian and asked you to come, right? Seven Stars' body froze. At the same time in the palace. Blessing Palace was completely surrounded by greenish-white flames. The flames shot up to the sky and almost lit up half of the night sky. The Imperial Guards and a few strong warriors outside were all trying to barge in. However, the fire produced by the phosphor powder was very strong, so normal water was useless. Seeing that the fire was getting bigger and bigger, the crowd became increasingly anxious. Emperor Jiawen stood at the side, and no matter how the crowd persuaded him, he refused to leave. The bright and scorching fire shone on his face, making his face look even darker. Your Majesty, don't worry. We've set up a Xian formation around Blessing Palace again, and it's heavily guarded. Anyone who comes out from there won't be able to escape successfully. Chu Ning, who rushed over later, tried to persuade him. Emperor Jiawen placed his hands behind his back and didn't say anything as he stared at Blessing Palace closely. No one knew what he was worried about. Upon seeing this, Chu Ning didn't say anything else as he turned around and rushed to the front, leading the Imperial Guards to strengthen the defense. At this moment, Elder Zhong Yi finally crossed the flames and rushed into the main hall. The moment he entered, he saw someone coming out from the ground not far away. It was Situ Xingqian. Elder Zhong Yi was elated and immediately rushed over. Xingqian. When Situ Xingqian heard this familiar voice, she immediately looked up. Elder Zhong Yi. Elder Zhong Yi then saw the bloodstains on her face and body, and his expression changed drastically. What happened to you? When he walked closer, he then realized that not only was Situ Xingqian's force sealed, but her shoulders and ankles were also injured. At this moment she couldn't even walk normally. Situ Xingqian's eyes were bloodshot and filled with deep hatred. It's Chu Luiyue. She was the one who stole my things and injured me to this extent. Elder Zhong Yi, you must avenge me. Elder Zhong Ye's heart ached terribly. Don't worry. When we get out of here, I won't let her off. Situ Xingqian was suddenly stunned and suddenly grabbed his shoulders. No, no. She just came out from below, you should have seen her. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 432. Elder Zhong Yi knitted his brows. She came out? But I didn't see anyone just now. An ominous feeling rose in Situ Xingqian's heart. You really didn't see her? Then what about now? Is she still hiding somewhere here? This place has already become a sea of fire. With her own abilities, how can Chu Luiyue successfully escape from this place without a sound? As she spoke, she agitatedly grabbed Elder Zhong Ye's arm. Elder Zhong Ye's heart ached when he saw her frantic and crazy expression. I wonder how much torture Xingqian went through inside for her to become like this. He comforted her. Xingqian, don't be anxious. Let's leave this place first. We'll talk about the rest later. Definitely not. Situ Xingqian screamed shrilly. She took that wooden box. I spent so much effort to get this thing from the Empress. How can I let Chu Luiyue snatch it away just like that? I'm definitely indignant. Elder Zhong Yi knitted his brows and asked, what wooden box? Is it very important? Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in. She didn't tell anyone about the wooden box and kept it carefully. Even when she asked Father and Elder Zhong Yi for help this time, she only said that Rong Jin was the fake Heaven's chosen son and that she was implicated. Facing Elder Zhong Ye's question, she instantly felt guilty. Why yes, it's more important. You must help me. Elder Zhong Yi surveyed the surroundings and his expression was tense. But Emperor Jiawen and the rest are already here and there will be more and more people. The later it takes, the harder it will be for us to leave. Also, I don't know who set this fire on purpose. We must get out of here as soon as possible. If not, your body alone won't be able to take it. He was very strong, but it wasn't easy for him to bring Situ Xingqian out in her current state. Besides, he hid his identity this time. If Emperor Jiawen and the rest knew who he was and the news spread to Mingyue Tianshan, he would definitely be in trouble. Xingqian, don't worry. Since you know that it was Chu Luiyue who stole your things, you'll have the chance to snatch them back in the future. Then, he carried Situ Xingqian on his back and planned to find an opportunity to rush out. Situ Xingqian was in a dilemma, but she knew that this was the best choice given the current situation, so she could only accept it. A silver barrier instantly enveloped the two of them. The light flickered and covered most of their figures. From the outside it was impossible to see who was inside. With a tap of his foot, Elder Zhong Yi instantly charged out of the greenish-white sea of fire and into the air. They're out. Suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the besieging crowd. Several figures immediately chased after him. Emperor Jiawen closely stared at the unity boundary. Even though he couldn't see their faces, he could vaguely see that there were two people inside. His heart sank. One of them must be Situ Xingqian. Stop them at all costs. Emperor Jiawen ordered. Countless sharp arrows flew out. But they were all blocked by the silver barrier in the end. But just as they were about to escape, a figure suddenly appeared. They were blocking their way. When Elder Zhong Yi saw that person's face, his expression immediately turned solemn. It's actually Yi Zhiding. The next moment, the other party's words completely stunned him. Long time no see. How have you been? Yi Zhiding recognized me? Thoughts flashed across Elder Zhong Ye's mind. I've only met Yi Zhiding a few times, and the other party hasn't even seen my face. How can he confirm my identity? Yi Zhiding smiled as he waved the fan in his hands. Since you're here, why don't you sit down and have a drink? Elder Zhong Yi guessed that Yi Zhiding was just bluffing. He didn't even plan to reply as he crazily circulated the force in his body. In an instant, the pressure on the barrier became even stronger. It then rapidly flew to the side. Elder Ye's smile didn't change as he waved his wrist, and the fan was instantly flung out. Wah! The moment it flew out, the fan actually fell apart and transformed into numerous white feathers that flew toward Elder Zhong Yi and Situ Xingqian. The sound of the feathers piercing through the air was heard. In the blink of an eye, those white feathers actually flew to the surroundings of the barrier. He was completely surrounded. Elder Zhong Yi immediately felt a strong suppression coming toward him. The surrounding space also gradually became heavy and stagnant. Even their speed started to slow down. Elder Zhong Yi was shocked. Yi Zhiding's fan is actually so powerful. At this moment, one of the white feathers suddenly pierced forward. The sound of something breaking was heard. Then, Elder Zhong Yi was shocked to see that a crack had appeared on the silver barrier around him. A white feather slowly pierced in. He immediately wanted to repair it, but it was already too late. The next moment, that white feather suddenly dissipated. The entire barrier also instantly transformed into countless rays of light and scattered in all directions. The veil hat on his head was also crushed by this terrifying force. But just as the two of them were about to be exposed to the crowd, Elder Yi suddenly shouted, "Stop! Collect!" The moment he said this, the white feathers instantly multiplied and connected with each other in layers. They completely covered Elder Zhong Yi and Situ Xingqian's figures. Such a huge commotion happened in the palace, so it naturally couldn't be hidden. Very quickly, countless pairs of eyes in the imperial city looked in that direction. In the dark night, only the fire that shot into the sky was eye-catching and shocking. Quite a few people started to secretly guess. Did something happen in the palace? During this period of time, the imperial city really wasn't peaceful. After just a few days, the empress passed away, Rongjin was deposed, and even the palace was burning. The entire imperial city's atmosphere seemed to become much heavier as a result. In the darkness, something seemed to be moving. It was unsettling. At this point, Chu Liyue's room was completely silent. After asking that question, Chi-Han fell silent. Chu Liyue quietly looked at him. She wasn't suspecting Chi-Han. If not, she wouldn't have directly admitted her identity. However, Chi-Han clearly didn't explain some things clearly. Even if what he said previously was reasonable, he just coincidentally followed Mu Qinghe here and found her by following the clues. But if he didn't know something, how could he be so sure that a young girl from a declining family in country Yaochen would be the high and mighty princess back then? Besides, even fewer people knew that she wanted to snatch the things in Situ Xingqian's hands. Could it be that Chi-Han found out all of this by himself? Mu Qinghe also suspected me, and the two of them even interacted quite a bit. But because of her completely different appearance and body, as well as her impeccable identity, he couldn't confirm it for a long time. How did Chi-Han find out? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 433. Chi-Han knew that he could not hide it anymore. After thinking for a while, he finally opened his mouth. After thinking for a while, he finally said, "Your Highness, this news came from Zhenbao Pavilion." Chu Liyue was stunned. "Second Master Yen?" Chi-Han nodded and then shook his head. Chu Liyue suddenly understood. "Did the head of Zhenbao Pavilion order Second Master Yen to pass this news to you?" A look of surprise flashed across Chi-Han's eyes. He did not expect her to figure it out so quickly. However, Her Highness has always been intelligent, so it's not strange that she could think of this. I went to Zhenbao Pavilion to buy herbs before. Later on, I found a letter in the box they sent. That letter? Chu Liyue understood. I see. If it's that person, it's not strange. This person has a mysterious background and is very resourceful. Country Yaochen's imperial mausoleum is almost completely under his control, let alone others. But, if he deliberately told Chi-Han this, doesn't it mean that he already knows my identity? Chu Liyue asked, "What about the letter?" Chi-Han said, "That letter was specially treated. After I opened it and read it, I burned it." Chu Liyue felt a little regretful. The other party was obviously very cautious and didn't want to leave any traces. Chi-Han glanced at her carefully. "Your Highness, I didn't tell you before because I didn't want you to worry. I originally planned to tell you after I found out that person's identity. In this world, other than the 13 Yu guards, there's only one other person who knows Her Highness' true identity. In fact, he even found out before they did." After Chi-Han received the news, he felt very conflicted. On the one hand, he was overjoyed and excited that Chu Liyue might be Her Highness. On the other hand, he was secretly worried that the other party would use this to do something that would harm Her Highness. Chu Liyue thought for a moment, smiled faintly and shook her head. "You want to find out his identity? I'm afraid it's a little difficult. Also, since he already knows and told you, there's nothing to worry about. He has helped me so many times. If he wanted to deal with me, why would he need to spend so much effort? That person's strength and background are both extremely strong. From today onwards, don't waste any more time and energy investigating him." Chi-Han was a little surprised. Just who was that person to make His Highness so fearful? Judging from His Highness' tone, he seems to be somewhat familiar with that person? Your Highness knows that person? No, I don't. Chu Liyue said straightforwardly. She actually wanted to know the identity of the first master more than anyone else, but the other party clearly didn't want her to know, so why should she waste her energy? When it was time to know, he would know. Since Chu Liyue had said so, Chi-Han naturally did as he was told. "Where are the other members of the 13 Yu Guard? Do they know me? They're not in country Yaochen, but we've always been in contact." "But I haven't told them about you. Before personally confirming His Highness's identity, he would not reveal it without permission. Chu Luiyue smiled with satisfaction. Well done. You're still as cautious as ever. She had no choice but to acknowledge Chi-Han today. The 13 new guards were still loyal to her and they were a huge help to her. However, the fewer people who knew about her identity, the better. Don't let them know about this first. When the time is right, I'll tell them personally. Chi-Han immediately replied. Yes, Your Highness. After straightening out all these matters, Chu Luiyue felt much better. Last question. Her slender and fair fingers tapped lightly on the table as she asked, enunciating each and every word. Did Mu Qinghe betray me? Zhongyi were both smart people. Let's not beat around the bush. Inside the palace, Elder Zhongyi and Situ Xingqian were trapped in a cage made of white feathers, and they couldn't move at all. Elder Yi stood in front of the two of them and looked down at them from above. Emperor Jiawen was standing at the side. Other than that, there was no one else. Elder Zhongyi didn't say anything, and Situ Xingqian seemed to have fainted due to excessive blood loss. I know a thing or two about Mingyue Tianshan's rules. If news of you barging into country Yao Chen's palace gets out, it won't be good, right? Jim? Yi Zhiding still had a smile on his face, but the words he said made Elder Zhongyi break out in a cold sweat. Even though Mingyue Tianshan accepted disciples like the other clans, there was a bottom line. They didn't allow anyone to interfere with the country's affairs. Elder Zhongyi had committed a huge taboo. Not only would he be punished, but he might even be chased out of Mingyue Tianshan. Yi Zhiding. What exactly do you want? Shouldn't I be the one asking you that? It's the middle of the night, yet you came all the way here, barged into Blessing Palace and even forcefully took her away. Speaking of which, isn't this all your fault? You're twisting the truth. Xingqian is country Xing Luo's eldest princess. You shouldn't have locked her up like this. Elder Zhongyi was even angrier when he said this. You tortured her until she doesn't look like a human anymore, yet you're blaming me? You're too much. You can't say that. Didn't you burn Blessing Palace just now? It would take a lot of effort to completely extinguish such a strong fire. Some of the palaces at the side also suffered the same fate. Elder Zhongyi was so angry that his beard trembled. I didn't set that fire. Elder Yi was dazed. Why not? Didn't you plan to set the fire and take her away in the chaos? Why would I use such a despicable method? If it weren't for that fire, I would have left with Xingqian long ago. You wouldn't have the chance to speak here. Looking at the agitated and angry Elder Zhongyi, Yi Zhiding became suspicious as he exchanged glances with Emperor Jiawen. Could it be? It really wasn't him? There's no harm in telling you today, there's someone who entered the Blessing Palace before this old man. Also, he even attacked Xingqian. He crippled one of her shoulders and one of her legs. When Elder Yi heard this, he immediately knitted his brows and carefully looked at Situ Xingqian, who had fainted on the floor. This injury wasn't caused by Emperor Jiawen? Emperor Jiawen also realized that something was amiss. He immediately stepped forward and stared at Elder Zhongyi. Who is it? Elder Zhongyi sneered. You all know this person too, Chu Luiyue. Impossible. Old man Yi denied it without thinking. How could this be done by his precious disciple? How is it impossible? This was something Xing Chen had said herself. Yi Zhiding, Chu Luiyue is your disciple, right? She came and left so smoothly today. Could it be that you're secretly helping her? T. Yi Zhiding directly swore. How can you believe Situ Xingqian's words? She had a grudge with my disciple long ago. She must have taken the chance to frame her. Elder Zhongyi chuckled in disdain and looked at Emperor Jiawen. Xingqian also said that Chu Luiyue stole something from her. It's up to you whether to believe it or not. Digression. I'm going out for a while and I'm updating at night. A better reading experience comes from my Yuan. Chapter 434. Hearing this, Elder Yi thought that this was bad. Didn't His Majesty also want to find something from Situ Xingqian? Since Zhongyi said this, he might be suspicious. As expected, he turned around and saw Emperor Jiawen knitting his brows as if he were suspicious. Elder Yi immediately asked, Zhongyi, why are you here? Zhongyi, since this is the case, tell me what Luiyue stole from Situ Xingqian. Emperor Jiawen also held his breath. Zhongyi was stumped. Situ Xingqian didn't even have the time to tell me. However, I'm sure that it's what Emperor Jiawen wants from Situ Xingqian when he locked her up. His eyes sparkled as he looked at Emperor Jiawen. Emperor Jiawen, you should know best what she stole, right? Elder Yi sneered. Zhongyi clearly doesn't know. He might even be making it up. Emperor Zhouwen kept quiet for a while and glanced at the unconscious Situ Xingqian. I'll talk to her about this personally when she wakes up. Elder Zhong Yi immediately became alert. What do you mean? I mean that before the matter is investigated, I'll have to trouble Elder Zhong Yi and Situ Xingqian to stay here for a while. Oh right, Rong Jin and Situ Xingqian's wedding is being prepared. As Situ Xingqian's elder, it's good for you to attend as well. Then Emperor Zhouwen raised his feet and planned to leave. Rongxiao, how dare you? Elder Zhong Yi was stunned by his words. In a moment of desperation, he directly shouted Emperor Zhouwen's name. Who is that Rong Jin? How can he be worthy of Xingqian? If you insist, don't blame me for being rude. Emperor Zhouwen stood still and sneered. I'm calling you Elder Zhong Yi on account of Mingyue Tianshan. However, this doesn't mean that I'm afraid of you. You're not the only strong person in Mingyue Tianshan. Elder Zhong Yi's chest tightened. You've caused such a huge commotion tonight, so you'll definitely attract a lot of attention. Elder Zhong Yi, you're a smart person. If you're willing to cooperate, I'll take it that nothing happened today. But if you don't agree, don't blame me for being merciless. One Situ Yen wasn't enough. Did they think that with Zhong Yi, everything would be fine? Elder Yi stroked his beard. I remember that it has indeed been a period of time since I went to Mingyue Tianshan. Looks like I should find some time to go back and pay him a visit. Elder Zhong Yi was so angry that his face turned red. He never thought that he would be threatened by Emperor Zhouwen and Yi Zhiding. However, this was indeed his weakness. He couldn't bear the punishment of Mingyue Tianshan. If he forced his way through, it wasn't like he couldn't leave this place. But in that case, only Situ Xingqian would be left here. He was truly worried. Thus, after Elder Zhong Yi's expression changed several times, he finally gritted his teeth and admitted defeat. He glared at Elder Yi. Yi Zhiding, don't be smug too early. In this old man's opinion, that precious disciple of yours is very scheming. His Majesty had always thought highly of Rongxiao. Considering that his body wasn't well, he rarely let him enter the palace. Today this meeting came out of the blue. However, Rongxiao didn't seem to think too much. After simply packing up, he put on a black cloak and followed eunuch Min into the palace. Emperor Zhouwen was waiting in the imperial study. Father. When he saw Rongxiao enter and wanted to bow, Emperor Zhouwen immediately said, There's no need for that. You don't have to be so formal. I called you here today because I have a few things to ask you. Rongxiao's jade-like face was as gentle as usual. I'll tell you everything I know. Emperor Zhouwen opened his mouth, but he hesitated in his heart. Rongxiao was his most beloved son. For so many years he felt very guilty that he couldn't accompany Rongxiao by his side. Hence, after Rongxiao came back, he had been thinking of ways to make it up to him. Asking him this question now. It's unavoidably inappropriate. Rongxiao quietly stood there as if he didn't see Emperor Zhouwen's dilemma. After a while, Emperor Zhouwen finally clenched his teeth and made up his mind. He asked, Rongxiao, when the palace was on fire last night, something went missing. Someone said that it was Lu Yu who did it. What do you think? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from my UN. He just thought that Rongxiao wanted to throw all the clothes away because he had just recovered from a serious illness and wanted to change his mood. He didn't expect this to be the reason behind it. That day, Situ Xingqian also arrived outside Princely Mansion and saw this scene. After leaving, she went to a remote alley and personally killed a few cultivators. She dismembered their corpses and chopped them into a pile of mush. Only then did she stop. Rongxiao spoke slowly, but the content made one's heart skip a beat. Father, do you think that this is also a coincidence? Emperor Zhouwen finally couldn't sit still and suddenly stood up. Where did you find out about this? Rongxiao calmly smiled. Father, if I don't even know who went to Princely Mansion and what kind of attitude they had toward me in the imperial city, how can I continue living? Emperor Zhouwen looked at him with a complicated gaze and didn't say anything for a while. Yeah, I almost forgot. Even though Rongxiao's body was weak, he was very smart. He had stayed in Mingyue Tianshan for so many years. If he didn't even have this bit of ability, it would really disappoint him. Those few people usually hang around the various casinos and brothels in the imperial city, and they usually attract a lot of hate. After they died, nobody cared about them. This incident was suppressed just like that. However, if you want to confirm it, it's very easy. You don't have to say anything. I believe you. Emperor Zhouwen tiredly waved his hands and leaned against the chair. Rongxiao kept quiet. The room fell into silence once again. Emperor Jiawen's thoughts were in turmoil. Anyone would be able to tell that something was wrong with this matter. For so many years, Situ Xingqian had always been high and mighty, gentle and elegant in everyone's eyes. But from this incident, it was obvious that she wasn't like that at all. In actual fact, after interacting with Situ Xingqian these few days, he already had this feeling in his heart. However, he didn't expect her to be even more vicious than he imagined. Linking all of these incidents together, many doubts were instantly resolved. This means that Situ Xingqian purposely targeted Lu Yu several times because her love turned into hatred? In this case, there would be a logical explanation for Situ Xingqian's involvement in Rong Zhen's incident and her accusation of Chu Luiyue for no reason. Rong Xiu lightly smiled. I didn't say that. Father, you have your own judgment of who's right and who's wrong. Emperor Jiawen opened his eyes and looked at Rong Xiu with a deep gaze. I didn't expect that the first time you chose to confess to me was because of Chu Luiyue. By saying all of this, Rong Xiu was undoubtedly admitting that he had his own power in the imperial city. He was far from being as aloof from worldly affairs as he had shown before. He definitely knew that this was a huge taboo for emperors. Aren't you worried that I'll be wary of you? Asked Emperor Jiawen word for word. The sunlight shone in from the window and reflected in Rong Xiu's eyes. He said, I'm just choosing the more important option after weighing the two options. And I'm his most important and only choice. Almost at the same time, Chu Luiyue was waiting for Elder Yi in her yard. So many things happened the night before, so Situ Xingqian would definitely point me out and expose everything to Emperor Jiawen. Thus I was already prepared. However, I didn't expect it to be my mentor. Chu Luiyue smiled and went up to him. Mentor, what brings you here? Elder Yi looked at her and suddenly asked in shock, when did you break through and become a rank 3 warrior? If I didn't remember wrongly, didn't this girl just become a stage 2 warrior during the Qingjiao competition? Why did she become so fast? Moreover, the aura on her body seemed to be different from before. If Elder Yi carefully checked Chu Luiyue's Yuan Meridian, he would know that this slight change was caused by the upgrade of her Yuan Meridian. Chu Luiyue's eyes curved into crescents. I just broke through 2 days ago. I learned quite a lot at Tai Yan Academy's library, so I tried to break through recently. As expected, I succeeded. Elder Yi thought about it and felt that it made sense. He had long known that Chu Luiyue had a lot of force in her body, so it was only a matter of time before she broke through. You're indeed my disciple. Haha. Upon seeing Elder Ye's happy face, Chu Luiyue's lips curled up, and she seemingly reminded him unintentionally, Why are you here today? Is there a reason why you came to find me today? Elder Ye's laughter suddenly stopped. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 436. Actually, he wasn't willing to make this trip. Chu Luiyue was his only disciple, and he couldn't wait to dote on her, let alone question her. But if he didn't ask, he wouldn't be able to answer to Emperor Jiawen. After much thought, it was more suitable for him to do it. Elder Yi coughed. Girl, where were you last night? Chu Luiyue blinked. Of course I was at home. If not, where else could I be? Old Mr. Yi carefully observed her expression. He always knew that Chu Luiyue was stronger than what she showed. At the very least, she was above his standards in terms of medicine refinement. He knew very well that this girl had many secrets. But he didn't want to suspect her because of this. You should know that there was a fire in the palace yesterday, right? Chu Luiyue nodded and smiled. It's hard not to know about such a big fire, mentor. Elder Yi thought for a while and finally asked directly, What happened last night? What happened yesterday, did it have anything to do with you? Chu Luiyue blinked. What do you mean? Elder Yi stared at her closely and after a while, he couldn't help but slap his thigh. I knew that Situ Xingqian did it on purpose. Tell me what exactly happened. Why did she want to kill you? Chu Luiyue was speechless. Even though she knew that Elder Yi would side with her, this was too straightforward. Chu Luiyue lightly coughed. It's a long story. Make it short. He still has to rush back to discuss this with Emperor Jiawen. Chu Luiyue shrugged. She thinks that I snatched her man. Elder Ye's expression instantly became strange and he was even a little speechless. Rong Xiu. Chu Luiyue nodded. Situ Xingqian personally told me last night. How could it be wrong? Elder Yi suddenly took a step back and sized up Chu Luiyue. Mentor, what are you looking at? Asked Chu Luiyue strangely. Elder Yi suddenly chuckled. No wonder. No wonder. So, it's because of this that Situ Xingqian kept trying to drag you down. Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched. For some reason, she seemed to hear a whiff of smugness. Enough. Master already knows. Just focus on your cultivation at home. There was no need to care about anything else. Old man Yi said and turned to leave. Suddenly he turned his head and asked, "By the way, did Mu Qinghe say when she was leaving?" Mu Qinghe's eyes moved slightly, but she quickly suppressed the slight ripples and shook her head gently. "Not yet. But it should be soon." Mu Qinghe had gained nothing from the trip to the Imperial Mausoleum, so she definitely wouldn't stay for long. Old man Yi nodded. His expression became more serious as he warned, "Going to the Tianling dynasty is a great opportunity. You must make good use of it." But the rest of his words were stuck in his throat. Elder Yi hesitated for a while and finally swallowed them back down. "If you want to leave, you must inform Master in advance." Chu Luiyue nodded. Today was the day of the Empress's funeral. Originally, everything was well prepared, but the sudden fire in the Blessing and Harmony Palace caused everyone to be in a state of panic. Even though Emperor Jiawen was very sad, he still decided to keep the Empress's funeral simple. In the end, only the noble consort's funeral was held. Emperor Jiawen collapsed from excessive worry, so he couldn't attend the Empress's funeral. Rong Jin suffered consecutive blows and was bedridden. He didn't even leave Crown Prince Mansion's doors. Oh, now that the plaque had been removed, it couldn't be considered Crown Prince Mansion anymore. In the end, only Prince Ping Rongqi and Rongzhen went. But out of the two of them, one had been a rich man's son for many years and didn't have any real power, while the other had a shattered pearl of essence and was completely useless. Even if they were added together, they didn't have much of a presence. As for the Xi family, only a few people went. The Empress's entire funeral was very simple. It started in a hurry and ended in a hurry. At this point, everyone could tell that Emperor Jiawen did this on purpose. As the Empress, she was the country's mother. After her death, she should hold a national funeral to show her status. But now, the funeral wasn't even as grand as a consort's. If the Empress didn't do something to anger His Majesty when she was alive, why would she have such an ending after her death? All sorts of rumors circulated on the streets, but they all silently disappeared in the end. Not long later, the crowd threw the Empress's death to the back of their minds and started discussing another matter. The Crown Prince position is empty, and His Majesty will definitely choose a new Crown Prince from the few princes. Emperor Jiawen didn't have many sons, but there weren't many who were suitable to be the Crown Prince. After much discussion, the crowd finally realized that the best candidate was the third prince, Rongjiu. In terms of capabilities, he entered the Northwest Army and fought on the battlefield for many years. He had many outstanding military achievements. In terms of age, he was in his prime. He was also the second-ranked prince after Rongjin. Other than his low birth status, he had almost no flaws. Almost everyone was certain that Rongjiu would become the new crown prince. But the current Rongjiu wasn't so optimistic. This was because he had already been locked up in the residence for a few days. The Empress's funeral had already ended, but father still hadn't let him go. This inevitably made Rongjiu worried. At this point, he suddenly heard that father urgently summoned Rongjin into the palace. It seemed like the two of them had talked for a long time in the imperial study. The longer he waited, the more uneasy Rongjiu felt. Finally, on this day, someone came to the palace. The Empress was killed by the third prince, Rongjiu. From today onwards, he will be locked up in the heavenly prison and await his punishment.